Post-Apocalyptic black technology battleship system. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126. Someone from the military. As Huang Qiulan spoke first, Li Yuan from behind also took a slight step forward and said, "If it's really like what you said, I will do it too." Dang. Jiango and the remaining people looked at each other and said, "Well, let's just follow them and take a look first." They are all in their 40s or 50s, and they are serious tempered and even a little timid. Especially people like Dang Jiango, who may not hesitate much when facing zombies, but when it comes to matters like choice and future, he instead you will appear to be forward looking and hesitant, worried about risks and failures as well as success and ambition. This is actually what typical ordinary people think. Dang Jiango is a veteran, but he has been retired for many years. Now in his 40s and 50s, what he fears most is the changes in life. Even if his current life is not good, he is people like this are more likely to be content with the status quo. Therefore, the meaning of his words was obviously that he wanted to follow Xia Bai and the others first, and if something was wrong, he would leave directly. Therefore, his words were also ambiguous, so as not to cause unnecessary misunderstandings and conflicts. After all, since then, judging from the current situation, Xia Bai's weapons are too powerful. Dang Jiango was also worried that, if he said no, someone would shoot him directly. In fact, Xia Bai could probably guess what Dang Jiango was thinking. After all, Xia Bai had spent a lot of time with Dang Jiango in his previous life, so he knew the man well and could probably guess what he was thinking. But Xia Bai didn't say anything. This kind of thing takes time to get used to. Although for Xia Bai, Dang Jiango is his acquaintance and can even be regarded as knowing everything about him, but the previous life was the previous life, and this life is this life. People's hearts are changing, and due precautions are also necessary. Xia Bai exhaled slightly, and just as he was about to say something, he heard Shen and Sheng's voice coming from the intercom. "Brother Xia, due south, a convoy has appeared. It seems to be a military convoy." Xia Bai immediately turned around. At this moment, he was standing on the corridor outside the room on the second floor of the water tower. From here, he could see the motorcade over there. Looking from this direction, the first two vehicles were a military light infantry fighting vehicle, followed by a row of Humvees. Xia Bai frowned slightly. It is obviously impossible for the military to come here to find ordinary survivors like Dang Jiango, so they came quickly. At that moment, Xia Bai went directly downstairs, lowered the battleship from the air, and asked Jihanyu, the former eldest sister, and Chen and Sheng to do brainwashing for Dang Jiango. The 5 new survivors. Chen and Sheng didn't have anything to say about this. He agreed immediately and said, "I promise to complete the training mission of new crew members." Dang Jiango and others who were following Xia Bai were a little confused. Li Yuan whispered, "Could these people be engaged in pyramid schemes before the end of the world? How powerful are pyramid schemes now?" But Yihanai was a little hesitant. She said, "Ying and I just joined in and caused so much chaos for you. Isn't this bad?" Xia Bai just smiled slightly and walked forward. The military convoy over there had already arrived. Bailan, who was behind him, patted Yihanai on the shoulder and walked forward. During the previous days in Liujia town, Yihanai's actions had won everyone's respect. The military convoy stopped not far below the water tower, facing Xia Bai's battleship from a distance. A few people jumped out of the light infantry tank in the lead, but the military uniforms they wore were slightly different. Xia Bai glanced slightly. He took a quick look and found that there was someone he knew inside. The profiteer from the Ice City survivor prison now changed into a standard military uniform, which made him lose a lot of his cunning temperament. Xia Bai was not surprised that this man had changed into a military uniform. When he was in Bingcheng prison, this man could even get missiles. How could that be possible without a tyrannical military background? However, when Yang Chengxi appeared here, it seemed very clear that these people were here for him, and the battleship. Soldiers jumped out of each vehicle and set up security around them. There were also a group of people approaching the battleship. Xia Bai took a glance and said nothing. Yang Chengzi walked over side by side with another middle-aged officer. As soon as the two sides met, Yang Chengzi gave Xia Bai a bear hug in a slightly exaggerated manner, looking very enthusiastic. I asked you, why didn't your grandma go with me last time? It turns out that you have such a treasure in your hand. No wonder you need missiles. TSK. What a good boy. You hide your secrets. On the other side, Dong Jiango and the others, Li Yiyuan shrank his neck when he saw the military people, just like a mouse seeing a cat. Even if no one paid attention to him, he would instinctively hide behind them. Dong Jiango looked at the scene here with a thoughtful expression. Xia Bai and others have military backgrounds. Xia Bai knew that Yang Chengzi was 100% pure politeness, but he was very good at talking and could hardly annoy others, so he also smiled and said, thanks to those few thunder aids. Otherwise in Bingcheng by then, it would have been broken long ago. Yang Chengzi is also a talkative. He is the kind of person who can chat for half an hour and an hour just by saying hello. But before he could speak again, the middle-aged officer beside him stretched out his hand to Xia Bai and said, hello, you are Mr. Xia, I'm Wen Wei. I belong to this. Man reported a long list of military ranks and names. Xia Bai finally realized after hearing this that this man was actually a civilian. As soon as Wen Wei opened his mouth, Yang Chengzi fell silent and stood with his hands tied, squinting at the battleship that had switched back to the RV form not far away, obviously very interested in it. Xia Bai was also very polite to Wen Wei. Although he probably guessed that this group of people came all the way to his battleship, he still respected the soldiers very much. When the end comes, everyone will when one is in danger. No one has the responsibility or obligation to save anyone, but soldiers are still fighting on the front line and fulfilling their responsibilities. This alone is enough for people to have the most basic respect. But this Wen Wei was not so polite to Xia Bai. After a few simple words with Xia Bai, he went straight to the point and said, Mister, it's clear, but it still needs to be said. We suspect that you stole the latest research results of the military's scientific research department, and now we want to recover the illegal weapons you hold. Xia Bai touched his nose and said, it's not good to accuse someone of stealing things when you come up, right? Don't worry, everyone. This is definitely not a plot where the protagonist is fighting with the military. Brothers, it's not easy to write a new book. Please support me. Chapter 127 Fireworks Bomb. When Weidao said, Mr. Where is this military scientific research weapon? Xia Bai noticed that this guy called his warship military scientific research weapon instead, as if it was definitely something Xia Bai had stolen from a military base. Xia Bai took a slight breath. He knew that there were all kinds of birds in the world, and not all soldiers were reasonable. But at least they were not deserters. They were still serving the military, resisting the apocalypse and saving more people. He worked hard to survive, so Xia Bai was still polite at this moment and said, I don't need to explain this kind of thing to you, right? When he shook his head, from a strict point of view, judging by the laws before the end of the world, you have committed murder, theft, and maybe even the crime of raping a woman, etc. There is no evidence yet. Xia Bai didn't speak this time, but Hao Zuan couldn't help it anymore and said, oh, then if I kill a police or military zombie, will that mean I'm attacking the police and endangering public law enforcement? Hao Zuan has a straightforward temper, and with Lin Yangan fighting side by side, he actually has a good impression of the military. He was smiling before, but now he can't help it. When Wei frowned slightly before he wanted to say something, but Yang Chengzi beside him couldn't sit still either. Yang Chengzi knew who Xia Bai was, although Xia Bai is usually amiable and can help any survivors who are in trouble. He is also a character who kills without batting an eyelid. He is a character who takes the soft, but not the hard. It's okay to be amiable, but when someone comes up, conflict, that is definitely a master who kills people, and will never tolerate it. The last time he was in Bingcheng prison, when Xia Bai killed a whole bunch of survivors for a little girl, Yang Chengzi still remembered it. And only Yang Chengzi himself knew that, although he came with Wen Wei, and seemed to be a relationship neutralizer, in fact, he had another layer of opinions. Yang Chengzi pulled Wen Wei slightly, and first said to Xia Bai, well, Uncle Wen is from the Shengjing military region. He has been in the agency before the apocalypse. Although he became an awakened person after the apocalypse, he didn't have much contact with the battlefield. The situation has always been at the back, so some concepts are still a bit. If it weren't for special circumstances this time, the two of us wouldn't have come, but we definitely didn't mean it. Brothers don't think about other places. Look, we come here, there are only these 5 or 6 vehicles, there are only a few people in them, and they don't bring any heavy weapons. Isn't this clear? I'm just afraid that you will misunderstand me, brothers. We are all survivors, and we all walk on 2 legs with our heads. When thinking about living people who speak with their mouths, kindness is the most important. Kindness is the most important. Then Yang Chengzi turned around and said to Wen Wei with some anxiety, Uncle Wen, you didn't tell me before that you wanted to start like this. Otherwise, as we said before, I will talk to Brother Xia alone first. Talk. Wen Wei glanced at him, frowned slightly, and said, I heard that you were hanging out with Mr. Jin, buying and selling supplies everywhere, and now you are acting like a businessman. What kind of soldier do you think you are, even? Yang Chengzi was choked by these words, and opened his mouth. He didn't say anything for a while. Xia Bai can understand what Yang Chengzi means, although the end is the end, except for those who are brave and fierce, and make a living by robbing others, who is willing to cause conflicts everywhere. He took a breath, and planned to say something, but at this moment, behind the military convoy outside, the peripheral soldiers who were on guard suddenly burst into exclamations almost at the same moment. The Bluetooth headset Xia Bai was wearing sounded the voice of Li Jinggyang, who was controlling the Black Hawk 13 in the battleship. A large group of zombies are appearing in the direction of the city. Xia Bai frowned slightly. The military convoy came from outside, and the rear of the convoy rushed out, completely in the opposite direction from Xinjiang City. So, soon, Xia Bai no longer had to guess, because at this moment, a heavy-duty container truck was driving from the outside at lightning speed. From the time when the military security personnel behind the car spotted the car to when it appeared in front of Xia Bai's, the field of view lasted only a few seconds. It was moving at an extremely fast speed, crashing into the convoy in this direction like a heavy cannon. Moreover, at the moment when the first container cargo appeared, another heavy container cargo followed closely behind, with a distance of nearly 100 meters between them. Rushing towards this side one after the other, this car suddenly appeared, but its purpose was extremely clear. It was the people present. Everyone's expressions changed. The soldiers behind opened fire instantly, and then the 2 infantry fighting vehicles also took action urgently. The 20mm caliber cannons on the vehicles fired violently, but the vehicle in front seemed to have been processed, and the front of the vehicle was reinforced with bulletproof alloy. A row of shots came down. Although the front of the car was smashed, it was still not forced to stop. Its speed is too fast and its inertia is too great. Its front tires had been blown out, but it was still dragging a series of sparks and screeching noises along the ground. The Humvees and military personnel behind them got out of the way one by one, while the infantry fighting vehicle in the center was still firing steadily. The 20mm cannon was tearing apart the structure of the vehicle inch by inch like a scalpel. But the method is crazy and brutal. The second infantry fighting vehicle began to circle and opened fire on the heavy box cargo behind. Xia Bai had begun to retreat. His eyes swept over the 2 trucks that began to slow down under the strong firepower, but his brows furrowed tighter and tighter, and he faintly sensed something was wrong. He forced Hao Zhuang and Bai Lan to retreat, and at the same time, said in his message channel, everyone return to the battleship immediately. Hurry, over there. When Wei said, Mr. Xia, please face your situation and your actions squarely. You, beside him, Yang Chengzi, who had been staring closely at the heavy truck, watched as the cannon tore apart the entire front structure of the cargo box, revealing the colorfully packaged boxes that were hit in the rear cargo box. That is fireworks. Yang Chengzi suddenly changed his color. However, almost in an instant, the soldiers who were firing on the infantry fighting vehicles also realized this. Several groups of people roared, cease fire. That's a car full of fireworks. But It was too late. The heavy cargo over there had already begun to burn point at this moment. A military Hummer rushed out from the corner and slammed into the side of the heavy-duty cargo truck from one side, knocking the already shaky cargo truck over and heading away from everyone. Roll over, please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. I glanced at this chapter and said that I suddenly felt a lot of pressure. However, this sudden thing has been prepared for a long time. Chapter 128 Horrible Creatures. Yang Chengxi saw a firework slowly rising into the sky, blooming under the bright sky point. However, when Wei pulled Yang Chengxi up and rushed towards an infantry fighting vehicle approaching over their point on the other side, the flames on the overturned heavy-duty cargo were getting bigger and bigger, and the vehicle personnel on both sides were running back. The soldier who just drove over also jumped off the Humvee and ran this waypoint at the same moment. Xia Bai and others were returning to the battleship point. The second box truck not far away was still coming at lightning speed, like a rampaging beast at high speed point. And at this moment, the heavy box truck filled with fireworks exploded point. If you look at it from a distance, it looks like a grand scene of thousands of flowers blooming. All kinds of fireworks are flying everywhere. Some rising into the sky, and others flying around on the ground point. And because of the explosion, what no one at the scene noticed was that during the explosion, the heavy box truck behind almost plunged into the explosion, and its external structure was instantly torn to pieces by the explosion. And in the billowing smoke and dust, one could clearly see a black shadow more than 10 meters long jumping out from the broken heavy-duty box truck. However, for Xia Bai and the others, this was not a grand scene point. When the explosion occurred, Xia Bai was activating the battleship to prepare for emergency takeoff. How Zhuang and the others saw the first moment of the explosion point, it was a ball of light, suddenly brightening, and then smoke and shock waves surged in. How Zhuang watched helplessly as the body of the soldier who bravely knocked over the heavy box cargo was instantly lifted away, and his body seemed to be separated. It was pulled open inch by inch in several directions, and blood was thrown away, but in the blink of an eye, it was swallowed up by the shock wave carrying smoke and dust from behind, and nothing could be seen, only smoke and explosions, and the occasional flash of astonishing bright lights, and sparks like fireflies thrown down from the air in the smoke and dust point. The battleship was hit instantly. The battleship was relatively large. As soon as it took off, it was fired by an unknown number of fireworks. There was an explosion at the top of the battleship, as if something had exploded. System alarms blared. Warn. There is a problem with the external facilities and the shield system is affected. Warn. The battleship is damaged. The current damage level is 19%. 0.20%. Xia Bai realized in an instant that a certain solar panel that was outside the protection of the battleship's armor was probably blown up. The explosion of a carload of fireworks was no joke. It was equivalent to several tons of pyrotechnics exploded. At such a close distance, the power was not small. The explosion came so fast that it was only a moment away from human reaction. In an instant, the battleship that was just about to rise tilted heavily to one side and almost fell back to the ground below. The system immediately sent out multiple alarms. Xia Bai activated the battleship's shield. As soon as he stabilized himself to withstand the aftermath of the explosion. The purple electromagnetic shield rose instantly, but then began to dim. Warn. The electromagnetic shield system failed, and the energy supply failed. The energy of the electromagnetic shield comes from the solar cell matrix and the main energy supply system of the battleship. Logically speaking, if the solar cell matrix fails, the main energy source will immediately continue to supply energy, but at the moment, it seems that it is because of the solar cell matrix. The failure directly affected the energy supply of the entire shield system. This may be related to Xia Bai and Hao Zhuang's immature installation techniques with half knowledge. But this was not the time to think about this. Xia Bai increased the energy supply to the shield, pulling the shield's power to overload in one breath. The outer electromagnetic shield flickered slightly, and finally took shape and even became extremely bright. Stand up. With this, the battleship stabilized the battleship in the billowing smoke, and Xia Bai then controlled the battleship to rise slowly. Amidst the buzzing sound of the battleship, he was raising the altitude little by little, but Deng Jianguo and others who boarded the battleship for the first time were completely stunned. When they first discovered that the heavy-duty cargo truck was full of fireworks. They all thought they were doomed, but they really didn't expect Xia Bai's battleship to be so powerful. Dan Jianguo hugged an unknown object in the corner and thought blankly. Fortunately there was no conflict just now, otherwise they would have crushed this thing to death. Fortunately, Hao Zhuang and others had already calmed down and sat down in order to take safety measures. However, Li Jingyang in the corner was still clutching the drone control panel in his hand and operating the drone. As the Black Hawk 13 was still outside, he avoided the fireworks that were like missiles to the drone and flew through the sky in a thrilling way. At the same time, he did not forget the mission that Xia Bai gave him. During the flyby, he still while observing the movements of the zombies coming from the direction of Xinjiang. He shouted one after another to alert the zombies of their advance point. However, the launch of the battleship was not smooth, because at that moment, an extremely terrifying and ferocious shadow instantly jumped out from the billowing smoke and the still blooming fireworks. Collision warning. Xia Bai's reaction was extremely fast. He lowered the battleship instantly without even seeing clearly what it was, and forcibly bypassed the thing over his head. He turned his head and watched with the light of the battleship shield as the extreme mutant, which was more than 10 meters long, jumped over the head of his battleship, bathed in the overwhelming scattered sparks, and disappeared into the smoke and dust on the other side. This was like an astonishing scene of a whale leaping out of the sea. Xia Bai had never seen such a large extreme mutant in his life. He couldn't even see the full picture of this thing in the smoke and dust. He reacted instantly. The heavy-duty cargo in front contained tons of fireworks. The car behind contained an extreme mutant that had never been seen before. On the other side, zombies in Xinjiang were swarming in large numbers. Come on, this is the triple killing move of intelligent zombies. Are these things following Yang Chengxi? The real highlight, or killer move, is this terrifying extreme mutant. Fireworks explode and explode the entire place, and the smoke and dust will provide it with a perfect hunting environment. But his eyes followed the monster as it landed, watching as its two insect-like hind limbs were tightly locked with a chain, extending from the smoke and dust as it jumped, accompanying the monster's movements. Xia Bai instantly realized that this might be the remaining chain of the extreme mutant that was tied to the second heavy-duty container. The second heavy-duty container had been shot at indiscriminately by the military, and it was probably torn into pieces with the explosion. This monster rushed out. But, wait a minute, Titan. At this moment, Bailan shouted from the message channel, "Be careful, Xia." Bai turned his head like lightning and saw the two chains pulling a large, broken truck from the direction where the extreme mutant had rushed, crashing into it like a giant pendulum. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Crisis. There was a loud noise, and the shield on Xia Bai's battleship flickered slightly. The battleship only swayed slightly under the sudden impact, and instantly stabilized its figure again. But the wreckage of the large truck was the shield was shattered into pieces during the impact, and was thrown into the sky in smoke, dust, and fire. At the same moment, a terrifying howl sounded from the other side of the battleship. Extreme mutants are different from zombies, who have no vision. Some with complete visual organs still have vision, and this one obviously has visual organs. Therefore, for it, the buzzing battleships and the shields above the battleships, that were extraordinarily bright due to overload in the smoke and darkness, were like beacons in the dark night. This is probably why the battleship was targeted by that extreme mutant. The battleship's outer shield was flashing slightly, and a warning icon had already appeared on the shield-related indicator screen on the control panel interface. Finally, in the next moment, the system prompt sounded in Xia Bai's mind. Warn. The shield system is offline. Please repair the relevant modules immediately. Xia Bai changed color slightly and immediately issued a series of instructions. Isolation shield system module. Carry out high priority maintenance immediately. The shield system has been isolated. The functions related to the shield system have been completely offline, and maintenance is about to begin. Estimated energy point consumption: 31 points. Estimated repair completion time 21 minutes and 36 seconds. The electromagnetic shield only has a problem with the energy supply, and it is not a core component of the battleship's movement. It can be repaired separately, and it won't take long. The dazzling purple shield on the battleship disappeared instantly, revealing the cold and dark hull it covered. At the same moment, the explosion was coming to an end. Flames were burning on the ground, and debris was everywhere. Thick smoke rose, but the oscillating smoke dispersed to a thin line. An armored vehicle burst out of the smoke on one side. Yang Chengzi fell in the corner of the armored vehicle, staring at the bowl-sized hole in front of him that was opened by the explosion. His face was covered with cold sweat, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. Just now, the fireworks truck exploded just after Yang Chengzi got on the bus, and he fell directly into the carriage. If the position where he fell had been half an inch higher to one side, he would have been blown to pieces right now. When he was sitting on the seat on the other side, clutching the seat belt tightly, and his face was covered in cold sweat. But Yang Chengzi reacted quickly. He couldn't waste time worrying. He stood up directly, rushed to the cabin front, and urgently contacted all members of the entire formation, asking them to report their situation immediately. The survival rate was higher than Yang Chengzi imagined. The leaders of this operation were Yang Chengzi and Wen Wei, two young men who had not engaged in combat much, but the military personnel equipped with them were all well trained. In such an explosion, there is still a survival rate of nearly 60%, and an armored vehicle was hit by something unknown, torn apart alive, and completely scrapped. However, some people were seriously injured. Some brother's arms, his legs were blown off. Yang Chengzi's heart felt cold, but at this moment, there was a loud noise in the field. Yang Chengzi immediately turned his head and looked in the direction of the sound. The first thing he saw was a large amount of dirt and mud on the ground that was shaken up by the cannonball, and a terrifying creature that was more than 10 meters long and covered in pitch black scales after the explosion. It was also the first time for Yang Chengzi to see such a huge thing, and he couldn't help but gasped. Such a big thing, where did it come from? That's a type 3 virus infection. But how could such a thing appear here? When Wei came over at some point and looked at the extreme mutant, which was huge, but had an unusually strong and flexible body, and his expression changed. It's as ugly as it needs to be. Yang Chengzi changed his color and said, "Is this type 3rd? Before when Wei could answer, Yang Chengzi was quickly attracted by the situation outside. Because just after the giant creature rushed out of the billowing smoke, a cold and dark warship was swaying through the smoke, suppressing the flames and thick smoke, and sailing out inch by inch. It was completely black, and looked extremely sharp and powerful. The black barrel was pointed directly at the huge creature running on the ground. Extreme mutants are different from zombies. They are more like beasts spawned by viruses. They know how to kill and attack, and they also know how to avoid. That's Xia Bai's battleship. Yang Chengzi took a deep breath. Notify all units to cooperate with the aircraft to strangle this extreme mutant. When he suppressed Yang Chengzi's shoulders and said, "It's impossible. It's a type 3 infectious agent. We can't kill it." At the same moment, in the battleship, Xia Bai had once again exchanged places with Chen Qiancheng. Chen Qiancheng sat in the driver's seat and stared at the extreme mutants jumping around the audience. His face turned pale, and his hands holding the battleship's joystick were covered in cold sweat. The battleship's shield has failed. Chen Qiancheng knows that, as long as this kind of thing is killed once, and comes close to the battleship, it may not be able to tear the external armor of the battleship, but it is enough to tear the battleship off of trouble. Therefore, Chen Qiancheng is slowly raising the altitude. Here is the flight advantage of the battleship, and he must take advantage of it. When Xia Bai came to the weapon module, he fired a shot immediately, forcing back the monster that was about to attack through the darkness. Immediately afterwards, they rushed out of the dust area of the explosion, and their heavy artillery was directed at the extreme mutants here. But with just one shot, Xia Bai realized that this monster seemed huge, but it was extremely flexible and smart. As soon as Xia Bai's battleship's gun muzzle turned, the opponent knew the danger and how to avoid it. And yesterday, Xia Bai collected thousands of energy points in Liujia town, and then there was a big battle. The 30mm caliber bullets for the machine gun were almost exhausted on the spot. Last night, he was dizzy because of the side effects of the strengthening potion. We just started planning the machine gun bullets early this morning. The two manufacturing facilities produced them at the same time, and now there are less than 200 rounds of bullets, 200 rounds of ammunition. The current situation, and the rate of fire of the battleship's cannon, are simply not possible. The turret of the battleship's second weapon module is heavy, and although its turning speed is much faster than that of ordinary tank guns, facing such an extreme mutant that moves extremely fast, it is impossible to hit it within a few shots, and if if it cannot be killed, the battleship is likely to enter dangerous territory instantly. This was the first time for Xia Bai to see such a large extreme mutant, and he had never even heard of it. In his previous life, his class was too low, and he had no way of understanding the situation in this regard. However, at this moment, another bad news came from Li Jingjiang. In the direction of Xinjiang, the zombies are almost coming. They are so dense and dense, there are too many zombies in the provincial capital city. Once we are entangled, we may not be able to escape, and at the same moment, the extreme mutant that moved to the side of the battleship like lightning jumped up from the ground and rushed toward the battleship like thunder. At this moment, in the infantry tank over there, when Wei said something that surprised even Yang Chengzi. Let's hit that monster from the side. Quick. Chapters 129 and 130 have been reposted and modified. The questions raised by everyone have been corrected. We hope for continued support. Chapter 130, Bombing Mutants. When Wei was the nominal supreme commander this time, although the soldiers driving the infantry fighting vehicles found his orders unbelievable, in the ever-changing battlefield, no matter how unbelievable the orders were, they had to be executed immediately. At that moment, he accelerated directly towards the battlefield, rushed to the center. At this moment, Yang Chengzi became anxious. He took 2 steps forward and pressed the soldier's hand. Stop. Don't move. Do you dare to take another step? Then, he looked at Wen Wei in front of him. He called Uncle Wen politely and said angrily, Wen Wei, are you crazy? Are you looking for death? I'm not crazy. Our mission is to get the application technology of high-strength electromagnetic shield for small-scale aircraft from the Black Phantom. We want to get the Black Phantom from Xia Bai, and we also need to ensure the safety of the Black Phantom. Yang Chengzi took a deep breath and didn't know what to say for a moment. In the field, when the huge monster jumped up, Xia Bai instantly noticed its movements. The battleship's weapon control platform has a more complete field of view and various analysis interfaces than the cockpit. Especially at such an extremely close distance, the monster's movement trajectory and the time of impact with the battleship are all determined by the battleship's auxiliary system. Marked out. Xia Bai noticed its arrival immediately, and Shenshai and Cheng also noticed it. But at this moment, Shenshai and Cheng firmly stabilized the fighter plane in midair and stopped raising its altitude. He also realized that, even if he accelerated his rise instantly, he might not be able to get rid of this monster. The battleship creates a good attack environment for Xia Bai. This was not the first time that the two of them had cooperated. At this moment, they seemed to have an amazing tacit understanding. Xia Bai's naval gun turned around instantly, and the black muzzle twisted amidst the sound of metal transmission, and was about to complete a 60-degree twist. However, although the battleship had marked the precise movement trajectory prediction of the monster and the time of collision with the main body of the battleship, its speed was still too fast, and Xia Bai felt incredible. This thing is so huge. How can it be so fast? Xia Bai's cannon had just turned 45 degrees, and the monster had already hit the main body of the battleship with a thunderous momentum. The electromagnetic shield module was offline. This monster came up to fight, and it faced the impact of this extreme mutant. In an instant, the hull of the battleship sank suddenly, and the tips of the blade-like joints of this thing penetrated sharply into the wall of the battleship. This thing can actually penetrate Xia Bai's battleship. This thing even opened its mouth and took a bite. Warn. The outer wall of the battleship is damaged. The battleship tilted severely in an instant, and a thick black hairy arthropod was blocked at the end of the ship's gun. tightly blocking the barrel of Xia Bai's number 2 weapon module in its current position and unable to rotate. Chen Xiancheng slowly raised the joystick in the cab, raising the warship inch by inch among the heavily poured warship. Xia Bai felt a shift of the battleship's center of gravity and instantly realized what this guy wanted to do. The battleship was readjusting its direction and facing the sky during the attack of this monster. Under Chen Xiancheng's control, it suddenly accelerated in the next moment and hurtled towards the sky at high speed. At the same moment, Xia Bai's naval gun fired instantly, and the instantaneous vibration of the gun barrel and turret shook the extreme mutant like a mantis embedded on the outer wall of the battleship. Coupled with the battleship's instant upward acceleration, it was directly thrown off the battleship, but at the critical moment, it still penetrated the tail end of the battleship with its jointed limbs, all the way into the interior of the battleship, and then used it as a springboard. It was in midair. He twisted his body and tried to climb up again. Warn. The battleship's anti-gravity engine module is damaged. Xia Bai is trying hard to turn the gun. The interior of the battleship was also suffering huge shocks. Deng Jianguo and the others who were not wearing seatbelts fell violently. The battleship was rising vertically, and they were all falling towards the tail end of the battleship. The stick was inserted upside down. The sword is right in front of them. After all, Deng Jianguo was a veteran. He even found an opportunity to take out his knife and slash the foot of the knife hard. However, there was a layer of black horny scales on the thing. Deng Jianguo tried his best to cut it down, but he was stunned, leaving only a little scar. He was jolted and shaken again. But at this time, Bailan suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt, jumped directly from his position, clung to the wall on one side, found the fire axe, and then fell directly to the end of the battleship, heavily. Lift the axe and cut horizontally and vertically. The power of the awakened one is no joke. With one strike of the axe, the monster's blade was cut open by Bailan, making a hole as big as a bowl. However, the strength of this thing even exceeded Bailan's expectation. With one strike of the axe, the fire axe in her hand actually broke. The surface of the axe was cracked, and her own hands were covered in blood. But after the monster's blade legs were cut off, it was instantly unable to fix its body, and began to slide outward. At the same moment, outside, the battleship's gun muzzle had already turned around and fired head-on, hitting this terrifying creature in an instant. A ball of bloody fireworks exploded in the sky. Half of the thing's body was blown to pieces, and it fell heavily to the ground beneath its feet. Xia Bai said to Chen Xiancheng at the same moment, "Turn. Turn. Let's blow it up, Chen." Xiancheng controlled the battleship to suddenly slow down in the sky, then turn around and dive downwards. However, Xia Bai has already brought up the operation interface of another weapon, and a Thunder rate is ready to go. "I'm going to launch a missile. Be ready." In the distance, Yang Chengxi in the infantry tank only saw a warship dropping a roaring missile from the sky, and then suddenly raised its altitude again out of thin air immediately afterwards. An explosion exploded in the field, and the direction of the monster was instantly engulfed in boiling smoke. In the chaos, Yang Chengxi only heard Wen's incredible voice, and said in shock, "Where did they get the missiles?" Yang Chengxi couldn't help but touch his nose, thinking that we are afraid of death at the critical moment, but the missile was launched by himself, so it can be regarded as a contribution, right? Of course, strictly speaking, Xia Bai bought the Thunder rate himself, spending an unknown amount of important supplies, but at this moment, the battleship was restabilizing its body, and the anti-gravity engine was not seriously damaged. However, in order not to continue to increase pressure on it, the battleship was still slowly lowering its altitude. Xia Bai had no time to think about this, because when a missile went down, the value on his energy point display interface did not move at all. I have reposted chapters 129 and 130, and corrected the questions raised by everyone. Herbal tea has some ill thought out aspects. I would like to apologize to everyone here. The author is also a human being, and will always make mistakes. I hope everyone understand. I hope you can continue to support Herbal Tea in this book. Thank you. Chapter 131 Type 3 Virus. Xia Bai had never seen an extreme mutant that couldn't be killed by a naval gun or a missile. At this time, Li Jinggang said, "Brother Xia, the tide of corpses is coming. Needless to say. At this moment, everyone in the battleship could already see through the portholes the water tower is located on the outskirts of Xinjiang, and at this moment, dense zombies are swarming in. Xinjiang is a big city after all, and the scale of any zombie tide is much greater than that of Liujia town, Zhu City. Looking in the direction of the battleship, we can see a large area of black water. Some of them are still intact, running madly in front. Some of them have severely damaged shells, and they are stumbling behind the large army of the zombie wave. However, Xia Bai said, that thing may not be dead. Shai and Cheng, let's go into the smoke and dust of the explosion, and take a look. In the corner, Li Yiyan, who had fallen to pieces, said, we still want to go and have a look, but Chen Shai and Cheng and the others did not refuse. Chen Shai and Cheng even turned the battleship's direction immediately and sailed directly into the gradually spreading dust of the explosion. Yi Hanai also frowned slightly, but when she turned her head, she suddenly found Chen Yingying staring blankly, with tears in her eyes. Yi Hanai, what are you doing? Are you injured? Chen Yingying, no, I'm scared and want to cry. Yi Hanai opened her mouth, slapped the back of Chen Yingying's head, and said, just bear with me, don't embarrass me. Chen Yingying, Bai Lan in the corner was standing up and looking out the window. She could understand the reason why Xia Bai did not leave now, but wanted to confirm the life and death of the monster. Although Xia Bai seems to go his own way all day long, he is extremely concerned about the situation of the end of the world. He may be a bit individual in the small situation, but he has always done what he should do with his abilities. Bai Lan even always feels that in Xia Bai's heart it was as if he was always on guard against something extremely terrifying, even scarier than the end of the world. And the reality is, just as Bai Lan thought, this mutant is huge in size and has amazing abilities. It can't even be killed by missiles at the moment. Xia Bai must figure out what it is. Now that smart zombies have appeared in advance, the situation in the entire 3 eastern provinces has changed in advance. If this happens now, a terrifying extreme mutant is rampant, and soon, Xia Bai saw that thing clearly. The monster's body has been blown to pieces, and part of its body has even been evaporated and burned. From a distance, it looks like a large ball of plasma that has been pasted on the ground. Only some of its organs are intact, but the lotus roots were connected by broken threads in the plasma, and some of the limbs and organs exposed to the air were even still moving. Judging from the bloodstains on the ground, this thing was actually moving on its own, actively avoiding the unextinguished flames on the ground. It's like a creature that has been blasted to mush, but is still alive. Xia Bai's battleship came over. As if it felt something, it began to squirm in the opposite direction to Xia Bai's battleship. Blood bubbles began to appear in the plasma, and something similar to sarcoma began to grow. Its head is gone, but it's still alive. Did this thing exist in the previous life, but I haven't encountered it before, or did it appear this time? Xia Bai didn't know. He carried the flamethrower directly out of the battleship. He wanted to see if this thing could be burned to death by high heat. Bai Lan walked out closely behind Xia Bai. Xia Bai put on a gas mask and started breathing fire at the thing. It struggled in the flames, and the organs in the plasma squirmed faster. Those organs struggled and twisted crazily, as if they were feeling pain, and the growth rate of the sarcoma accelerated. There was a foul stench in the air. Bai Lan is an awakened person and does not need a gas mask. Looking at the scene in front of him and smelling the pungent temperature, he felt faintly nauseated. This seems like a scene from a horror movie. The monster was eventually burned to death in the high temperature flames. Xia Bai noticed that his energy points had increased by a full 500 points. What on earth is this? At this time, the tide of corpses over there was almost over. Xia Bai was silent for a moment, then shouted in the direction of the infantry chariot, if you want my battleship, just follow me. Send someone over, and let's have a good talk. On the other side of the chariot, Yang Chengxi grabbed Wenwei and said, you continue to keep in touch with the base. I'll go talk to him, and our vehicle will follow me. When Wei and the others also suffered heavy losses. A light infantry fighting vehicle was too close to the explosion, and was shot through, and burned from the inside. Several military off-road vehicles also suffered heavy losses, and there were only 3 vehicles left. Although Xia Bai said that, of course he couldn't hand over the battleship. He asked Wenwei and the others to follow him for 2 main purposes. First, he wanted to find out from the military what this extreme mutant was, what it is, how much the military knows about it, and secondly, Xia Bai sat down in the corner and said calmly, Li Jingyang, don't worry about the tide of corpses in Xinjiang. The military is watching for us. They can't be driven out. You spread out the Black Hawk 13 and attack the two pushing in the direction of the heavy box cargo. We must have been targeted by intelligent zombies. Looking at this handiwork, these intelligent zombies are by no means comparable to the ones we encountered in Sioux City. They have unique hunting methods and weapons for survivors, and even have extremely strong reconnaissance and counter-reconnaissance capabilities. We must find them as soon as possible and kill them to avoid future troubles. Li Jingyang nodded immediately. Xia Bai is not so optimistic. In this kind of area, the detection area of a drone is limited. If the other party deliberately hides, it is not easy to be discovered by them. But there is another possibility. Now Xia Bai, both Bai and the military are in bad shape, and the other party may take advantage of several opportunities to attack point at the same moment. Quite far away from them, a black convoy was advancing at high speed. Point in the leading car, a man covered in shrouds raised his head slightly, looking at a black spot slowly rising in the sky. That was Black Hawk 13. A man in the co-pilot with a blood-stained face said, Type 3 infectious agents can't even kill them. They may find us. The man covered in shrouds shook his head and said slowly, when facing Type 3, they did not use shields. It is likely that their shields have failed or malfunctioned. This is what we a chance to take them down. We've done so much setting up and now it's time to put the finishing touches on it. The other group of people are from the military. This is not far from the Changbei Mountain survivor base. I'm afraid it won't take long for reinforcement to arrive. Bypassing the zombie tide, we intercepted them from the side. Come and catch a turtle in an urn. Chapter 132 Cooperation Plan. When Yang Chengxi arrived on the battleship, his first words were, a convoy is catching up from the side. It seems that they want to bypass the zombie tide and intercept us. Xia Bai already knew this. He looked at the picture from Black Hawk 13 and recognized that this was the troop among the intelligent zombies. The sweepers. This is an intelligent zombie army formed entirely by intelligent zombies and equipped with various modern equipment collected. They paint all their vehicles black, reinforce and modify them, and learn and train at the same time. They are wandering in the wilderness and in the apocalypse. The devils and ghosts in the city specialize in hunting wandering survivors and some small-scale survivor gathering points, emptying out those wandering survivors who take refuge outside the large survivor bases, and clearing the non-survivor base areas. It has completely turned into a paradise for zombies, and then turned large survivor bases into isolated islands in the current apocalypse. They have a unique advantage. They only need to guide zombies and extreme mutants to kill the vast majority of survivor armed forces and even small groups of military troops. Therefore, even if they take action, they are very weak. Don't show up less, don't want to become the target of pursuit and attack by the military. And almost as soon as they started to move, Xia Bai discovered them and was ready before Yang Chengxi arrived. This group of raiders dared to appear at this time. They obviously saw that the shield of Xia Bai's battleship was completely invisible. At most, it was a thick shelled armored vehicle, but they probably never imagined that Xia Bai's battleship could be on the scene repair at this moment. There are still 7 minutes left for the battleship's shield to be repaired. When the battleship's shield is repaired, it will be time for Xia Bai to counterattack. This group of intelligent zombies dared to attack them, causing Xia Bai to lose a truckload of supplies. It was impossible to escape unscathed. Moreover, sweepers are the natural enemies of survivor convoys in the wilderness. It is always good for Xia Bai to kill one of them here. But in these 7 minutes, Chen Qianqing will drive the battleship to take the opponent in circles as much as possible, trying to escape with his life. After these 7 minutes, it will be the moment when the offense and defense are reversed. As for Xia Bai, he looked directly at Yang Chengxi in front of him, took a deep breath, and said, don't worry, this convoy won't make any waves. Even if we can't kill them, as long as we delay, the military reinforcement will. Are you coming over? Yang Chengxi was stunned for a moment, glanced at Xia Bai, and said, yes, but you must not stay until the military reinforcement arrive. I may be able to persuade Wenwei to stop this convoy and the zombie tide. You can borrow this opportunity as a direct escape. Xia Bai narrowed his eyes slightly. You came here this time, didn't you want my battleship? Why are you letting me go now? Yang Chengxi shook his head and said, that is the order that Uncle Wen carries with him. The order that I carry with me is not this. If the military asks me to come here just to be a good person and a bad person with Uncle Wen, then you are too. You underestimated us. Li Jinggang over there. The distance is getting closer. Chen Shai and Cheng, drive further to the right. Don't enter the city. Now. Their convoy is full of zombies, and the sweepers are intercepting them in a large circle, and they seem to be afraid of Xia Bai's Thunder 8. Now they are all scattered, approaching here like a big net, and Chen Shai and Cheng, who was nearby, couldn't notice where they were. Li Jinggang and Black Eagle 13 were his eyes. Xia Bai glanced back and looked at Yang Chengxi in front of him. Now is not the time to be in the survivor base. Let's stop talking nonsense. Besides, I have something to ask you, so let's go straight to the topic. You talk first. You, what exactly does that mean? Yang Chengxi took a deep breath and said, it's very simple. You may not be very clear about the situation in the Changbei Mountain survivor base. Now the factions are very serious. The military, the government, the survivors, large consortiums, and even the Scientific Research Bureau have all forming a force of their own. The power of intelligent zombies outside is expanding every day. They are like a group of bacteria. Although they are called zombies, they are essentially a new species. The current zombie apocalypse is their breeding ground. Everything we have left in abandoned cities is the intellectual nourishment they so desperately need. To be honest, although your aircraft is very special, the military has no time to take care of your affairs. This time, it was their own people who temporarily dropped out of the Scientific Research Bureau to chase them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for a clerk like me, Uncle Wen, to perform the task. But I can assure you that, although he is not very good at talking and is stubborn, he is not a bad person. When he was dealing with the Type 3 just now, he wanted to use himself to attract the monster on the other side, but my fear of life and death made him press it. Li Jinggang from behind, drive to the right. Drive to the right, Chen Shai and Cheng, I can see them. Stop shouting. There are 4 minutes until the shield is repaired. Xia Bai, can we be more concise and concise? Yang Chengxi, okay. Yang Chengxi took a deep breath. Let's put it this way, Uncle Wen represents the Scientific Research Bureau. They want to get your aircraft for a search, but I know this without you saying it. You may agree, but it would not be possible for me, because in this case, it is equivalent to handing over the battleship. The military may not do anything to you, but your aircraft will definitely no longer be yours. Therefore, unless if we fight, there is no way you can hand over the aircraft, right? Therefore, my purpose of coming here is different from Uncle Wen. When I was in Bingcheng prison, you may have already made some guesses. Yes, I have the military background, and this background is huge. Let me put it this way, I'm the son of the top military leader in the Changbei Mountain survivor base, and we are the largest force in the Changbei Mountain survivor base. I'm coming here this time as my father. I mean, Uncle Li and I. Oh, Master Li Jianbei told him about the previous incident at the Ice City survivor base. He admires you very much. In fact, he doesn't care about the technology you have, even if the military now obtains your various technologies. Given the current situation, the possibility that new technologies can be produced and widely used in a short period of time is too low, and my father feels that your own existence is of greater significance. And based on what you said last time in Liujia town, you want to go it alone, right? Xia Bai touched his nose. Yang Chengxi continued to speak quickly. The overall situation in the 3 eastern provinces is complicated now. What my father and Lioli mean is that they want to support you in establishing a survivor base outside Ji province. With what you have now, the aircraft tip resists the establishment of a pure survivor base in Langjiang province or Liao province. We cannot send out people, but we are willing to cooperate with you and provide you with the most critical material and weapon support. Xia Bai noticed that Yang Chengxi emphasized the word survivor. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 133 Stop the car. Xia Bai took a deep breath and said, "You mean, the military is willing to arm us, even though it has no personnel?" Yang Chengxi nodded. "Not only you, we want to support pure survivor forces on a large scale in the 3 eastern provinces." Xia Bai realized that this was not a cooperation at all. In a sense, this was actually an arrangement by the military. The military wants to support the survivors and reconstruct the entire 3 northeastern provinces in a multi-point way. The military has obviously foreseen the current apocalyptic situation. No matter how powerful the military's firepower is, it is impossible to clear out the zombies in the entire 3 northeastern provinces with carpet bombing. In that case, the entire 3 northeastern provinces will become scorched earth, and China's the population density is here. If we only stick to the Changbai Mountain survivor base, and according to the current growth trend and action pattern of intelligent zombies, the Changbai Mountain base will soon become a real doomsday island. By then, faced with a tide of tens of millions of corpses in the 3 provinces, the military Wolfang also has to be willing and willing. You must know that the population of the 3 eastern provinces exceeds 100 million. In the middle and late stages of the apocalypse, the number of zombies will exceed at least 70 million, which is at least dozens of times the living population. And the military only controls a part of the living population. This is an astronomical number. Unless the zombies all gather together, and before antivirus or a serum that can kill the virus is developed, it is impossible for the military to eliminate so many zombies in a short period of time. And if the zombies attack Changbai Mountain one after another, the survivors' base, no matter how strong their defenses are, and how fierce their firepower is still enough to be overwhelmed by the zombie tide. In the previous life, when intelligent zombies appeared, small-scale survivor bases in various places had probably already been formed, and even had independent armed forces and walls. Although the Changbai Mountain survivor base was huge, many small survivor bases will also mostly remain unchanged, but the situation in this life is different. Intelligent zombies appeared too early, and many survivor bases were destroyed in their infancy. From a long-term perspective, the military may establish more branch survivor bases outside. Better choice. Of course, there is another meaning here. With the existence of these peripheral survivor bases, the threats to the Changbai Mountain survivor base will also be diverted. Hunting zombies and other survivor bases will also reduce the pressure on the military. In the future, it is of great significance for the military to regain the entire 3 eastern provinces. Xia Bai's battleship has only just begun to take shape. In the eyes of most military personnel, the technology of the battleship itself is not that important, and it is impossible for the military to be so petty. In special times and special circumstances, the military has also shown amazing sincerity. Xia Bai had no reason to refuse. His current idea was to establish a survivor base in Shengjing, Liao province, to create space and train fleet members for future 4th and 5th level battleships. Prepare for alien confrontation. 5 years later, before the arrival of alien creatures, Xia Bai must ensure the absolute safety of his location. Intelligent zombies and alien creatures are like wolves and tigers, with the wolf in front and the tiger behind. He always has to chase the wolf first to drive away the tiger. The example of the previous life is there. Alien creatures plus intelligent zombies. Xia Bai holds a high-end battleship, which is enough for him to drink a pot. A survivor base needs to be built, intelligent zombies need to be killed, and alien creatures need to be fought. The future is full of complications and crises, but Xia Bai knew clearly that the future was the future. Only by taking the current step could he have the possibility to truly face more situations in the future. Otherwise, he would be stuck in the middle of the road now. At this time, there were only 2 minutes left before the repair of the battleship's shield was completed. Xia Bai directly responded to Yang Chengxi's request for cooperation, and then said, "I have another question. The extreme mutant just now is not what I saw at all. Any kind of past, what's going on?" Yang Chengxi glanced at him and said, "That is the product of type 3 virus infection. The virus is mutating. To be honest, as far as I know, from the beginning of the end of the world, relevant departments have already begun to develop countermeasures for this virus. Although the zombie movies we watch are often helpless against various apocalyptic viruses, but logically speaking, Countries around the world have begun research and development, and experts in various fields have jointly developed antidotes. It is impossible to say that there will be no progress, but the current situation, indeed, according to what I heard, this virus changes every day and will produce variants according to different environments. The emergence of intelligent zombies is one of the variants, and this type 3 virus is even more. One type of extreme existence is a variant that appears in the ocean. Marine creatures exhibit the characteristics of land creatures and land from the ocean. They first appeared in the Bincheng area. Xia Bai interrupted. Wait, Bincheng, Yang Chengxi noticed that Xia Bai looked different and asked, yes, Bincheng, what's wrong? At this moment, intensive gunshots began to sound outside the battleship. It was the opening fire from both sides. This meant that the distance between them and the sweepers had been shortened rapidly. At this moment, the distance between the battleship shield and the 1 minute left until the repair is complete. Xia Bai was indeed surprised. In his memory, Bincheng was one of the few cities destroyed by nuclear weapons in the 3 eastern provinces in the early days of the apocalypse. Intelligent zombies had not yet appeared at that time. For such a nuclear level military move, many people can't understand it. So, at that time, this type 3 virus infection had already appeared. However, Yang Chengxi continued, this type 3 infectious agent appears here. It is estimated that intelligent zombies were secretly transported out and used as weapons. I will definitely report this matter when I go back. To be honest, there are more than just this type of mutant infected agent. But there are hundreds of thousands of infected people and secondary infected people ashore in the city. It seems to everyone that the military is weak everywhere in the 3 eastern provinces, but in fact, my father and his important troops are intercepting these mutant infections. Without this layer interception, now the 3 eastern provinces are ruled by zombies and these monsters. How many survivors can deal with this kind of creature? Xia Bai couldn't help but gasp. These things were indeed things that he had neither been exposed to nor thought of in his previous life. And Yang Chengxi said, you go to Shengjing. When the base is established, we will contact you. Now I will convince Uncle Wen to help you stop this inexplicable convoy. You hurry up and leave now. Uncle Wen moves here. The reinforcement are from their group, and when they come, you really won't be able to leave. Xia Bai shook his head and said, these are intelligent zombies. Leave them to me. Don't worry, it won't take me long. Yang Chengxi frowned and said, what are you going to do? Xia Bai took a deep breath and said directly, Xiancheng, stop the car, please. Vote for recommendation. Please collect it. Chapter 134 Cunning Humans. The surging tide of corpses chasing after them had been put some distance away, but in front of the convoy temporarily formed by Xia Bai and the military, there were 7 modified vehicles that were painted black and reinforced and were leaving Xia Bai. They were roaring in a fan shape directly in front of them. Several of the vehicles had machine guns set up and were firing at them from a distance. There were even anti-tank rockets roaring in from a distance. The military convoy behind the Xia Bai battleship immediately opened fire and returned fire under the command of Wen Wei. However, just after Wen Wei issued the order, he saw the black ghost that had been speeding ahead suddenly stopped. Wen Wei was slightly startled. Is this guy crazy? There is a wolf in front of him and a tiger in the back. Are you stopping now to seek death? But he responded quickly and directly ordered, stop us in front of the Black Phantom. We must not let their main body of the aircraft have problems. We must take it back intact. And Xia Bai stopped the battleship at this moment. Of course not to seek death. At this moment, there are still 30 seconds left before the repair of the battleship's shield module is completed. The offline of the battleship shield module was mainly due to problems that occurred after Xia Bai's modified solar cell matrix was exploded. The real main body of the module was intact, so the repair time was not long, and because the module was not compatible with the main drive of the battleship is linked to the action, and can therefore be repaired independently during the battleship's operation. At that moment, his battleship slowly stopped and asked Yang Chengxi to get off. Before Yang Chengxi jumped out of the car, Xia Bai casually threw him a tube of reagent. It is an extreme virus inhibitor that can suppress the virus for a short period of time, but it cannot cure the virus. It can only suppress the virus in the short term and delay the disease. Yang Chengxi was stunned for a moment and said, "What is this?" Xia Bai smiled and did not answer directly. He just said, "Sincerity." The ultimate virus inhibitor was of little use in Xia Bai's hands. Since the military wanted to cooperate, Xia Bai directly gave this thing to Yang Chengxi. This kind of temporary inhibitor was basically useless here, because it is impossible to completely reverse the infection. The battleship does not yet have a laboratory module or a scientific research module. It is better to leave it to the military now. Maybe it can research something that can contain the virus, which is also a good thing. Sincerity? Yang Chengxi was even more stunned. However, as he watched, the battleship's hatch was slowly rising, and Xia Bai also turned around and walked directly into the battleship. Xia Bai replaced Chen Shai and Cheng from the front. Chen Shai and Cheng looked a little strange and said, "When he seems to be using his car as a shield for us." Xia Bai sat down in the posture position, took a glance, and realized that this was indeed the case. When his infantry fighting vehicle and another scarred military off-road vehicle were approaching from two directions, seemingly intending to cross the temporarily stopped vehicle, the front end of Xia Bai's battleship. Xia Bai shook his head. He activated the battleship directly, roared out between the two military vehicles, and collided head-on with an oncoming sweeper modified vehicle. On top of that modified vehicle, a person clung to the roof with one hand, carrying an anti-tank rocket launcher with one hand, but he aimed extremely steadily and fired instantly. This level is no longer something that any special forces can achieve. This is an intelligent zombie whose physical strength is comparable to that of an awakened person. However, facing the roaring rockets, Xia Bai did not dodge and rushed towards them. The black battleship was gleaming with cold light. When he was shocked when he saw this later. He was unable to establish communication with Xia Bai's battleship, so he leaned half out and shouted, "Stop!" However, it was already too late. As they were heading towards each other, the roaring rockets collided with Xia Bai's battleship. Boom. The explosion exploded, and smoke and dust on the ground were lifted up layer by layer, and layer by layer rose into the sky. Not only Wei, but also Yang Chengxi's expression changed. Is Xia Bai crazy? However, in the next moment, a cold light suddenly appeared in the smoke, and Xia Bai's battleship roared out of the smoke. On the battleship's hull, the electromagnetic shield shone brightly, and the cold naval guns pointed directly at the sky. But Xia Bai did not fire. His battleship lifted off the ground, only stabilizing at a position less than 1 meter above the ground, and then suddenly accelerated. In an instant, a stream of light tore through the entire battlefield. The cold and dark battleship accelerated at this end. In an instant, it left a long scorch mark of electromagnetic burning on the ground, and collided with the modified sweeper vehicle in front of it, which was unable to react at all. The entire front of the modified car was plowed open, and the intelligent zombies on it, and in the car, were wiped out instantly. Xia Bai's warship then turned around without firing its guns. It accelerated with thunder at a very low altitude, and ran directly into another sweeper's vehicle. It passed by with a sharp sweep and crushed it on the spot. Only at this moment did Yang Chengxi realize what Xia Bai's confidence was, that he could kill all the intelligent zombies in this convoy and leave before when his people arrived. This is a senseless killing, without firing a single shot, completely crushing them with the speed and shield of the battleship. You can't run away. Even if you see me crashing into you, you can't speed up my battleship. You can only watch and wait for death. Xia Bai was bullying these intelligent zombies because they didn't have weapons that could break through his shield, and he wanted to overwhelm the entire audience with a completely crushing attitude. If thousands of zombies came, Xia Bai might still consider it, but if a group of intelligent zombies wanted to have a gunfight, I'm sorry, just wait to die. Yang Chengxi couldn't help but think. So by running around for such a long time without opening the shield, was this guy actually attracting these intelligent zombies to fall into a trap? This guy's really crazy. Of course Xia Bai didn't know what Yang Chengxi was thinking, but the thoughts of the group of intelligent zombies at the moment were surprisingly similar to Yang Chengxi's. The leader of the Shroud Zombies car is on the far right. He is very cunning. When he actually takes action, he hides at the edge to avoid being killed. At this moment, he looks at Li Zongzong across the entire battlefield. The Black Ghost is certain that the other party's disguised shield was exhausted in order to attract them to show up so that they can be caught at this moment. The Shroud zombie couldn't help but feel frightened. In his opinion, the commander in the Black Ghost was simply crazy, or in other words, arrogant to the extreme. He would rather take huge risks to face 3 without a shield. In order to eliminate infectious agents, we must also devise a plan to trick them out and plan for total annihilation. This kind of scheming is terrifying. Humans are indeed the most cunning creatures. At this time, another intelligent zombie beside it said in panic, "What should I do?" The Shroud zombie gritted his teeth and said, "Then rush forward and rush into the tide of corpses behind." I don't believe it. They dare to rush into the corpse group with such a low altitude flying attitude. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 135. Balan is in a bad mood. After Xia Bai crashed into 6 other modified sweeper vehicles, he discovered that one of the sweeper vehicles had bypassed the front in a very obscene way. Instead of escaping, it quickly faced Xia Bai and the others who were chasing after them. The tide of corpses coming from Beijing rushed in the direction. Xia Bai, who had been living in the apocalypse for 5 years, immediately realized what these intelligent zombies wanted to do. This was undoubtedly an attempt to get Xia Bai to take advantage of the fact that he was also a zombie, so he could sneak into the zombies and escape. And the group of zombies, relying on Xia Bai's effort to kill their companions, were not far from success now, and were infinitely close to the zombie army behind them. No matter how fast the Xia Bai battleship is, it cannot instantly turn from one side of the battlefield to the other. The escape of this group of intelligent zombies seems to be a certainty. Xia Bai did raise the sky and raise the battleship, allowing Chen Shai and Sheng to shoot a thunder rate directly. This was completely like a cannon to swat flies, but it was surprisingly effective. The intelligent zombies in that car drove into the zombie tide, and the missiles roared in, accompanied by an earth-shattering loud noise, and cleared the place directly. In that zombie tide a large open space was cleared in the position, and the car was blown away. Xia Bai did not look at the results of the battle, and directly turned the battleship around. Under the gazes of Wen Wei and Yang Chengxi, who were completely stunned below, he sharply turned the battleship around and roared away in the direction away from Xinjiang City and Changbei Mountain, before disappearing in the blink of an eye. At the end of the sky point, when Yang Chengxi returned to the infantry fighting vehicle with the test tube in his hand, he heard Wen Wei furiously saying, "Are they fighting or venting? Do you think they are playing with bumper cars?" At the same time, Xia Bai was flying across the sky. After flying a certain distance, he landed from the sky point. His battleship was severely damaged, front and back, and the damage level had reached 37%. After that, he drove forward for nearly an hour before completely stopping at a roadside rest stop and began to repair the battleship. However, the atmosphere in the battleship is a bit strange. First of all, it was Dong Jianguo and others. Previously, the battleship was flying around in the sky and on the ground. They were thrown into pieces in the battleship. Later, a series of battles and the shock brought to them by the battleship itself. Now Li Yiyu and Dong Jianguo, Fu Deshan and the others were completely stupid. Huang Qiulan, on the other hand, seemed to be in high spirits. Although her nose was bruised and her face was bruised by the shock, she was eager to talk to Xia Bai. Obviously, she saw the power of Xia Bai's battleship and heard the previous discussion between Xia Bai and Yang Chengxi in the battleship. After talking about military cooperation, I suddenly felt that my choice was very correct. Following a group of people like this to build a survivor base outside was definitely a sure profit. Therefore, as soon as the battleship stopped and the danger was lifted, she hurriedly jumped out, wanting to talk to Xia Bai and show off herself. In the apocalypse, before zombies, women like her don't have much room to express themselves, but if they are building a survivor base, there will definitely be a moment when she, the pre-apocalyptic company boss, shines. But unfortunately, it was not good for her to go out today. She just put a smile on her face when she was stopped by Balan. Balan's cold face didn't know why, but it was a little extra cold today. "What are you doing? Go and take care of the injury quickly." Huang Qiulan also admired Balan very much. This is true admiration. The battleship had just ascended vertically, and the blade leg of the extreme mutant behind was inserted into the battleship. The scene of Baelan jumping directly from his position to chop the blade leg was deeply rooted in people's hearts in Huang Qiulan's view. Xia Bai's team was small in number but well coordinated. It was absolutely a perfect team point therefore, facing Baelan, who was at least 20 years younger than herself. Huang Qiulan was very polite and said, "It's okay, my injury is not serious." "Well, I think, what are you thinking about? Go and deal with it quickly." I cut off the extreme mutant's blade in the car. "You are all close. If the wound is contaminated, it will be infected." Of course, the blood of extreme mutants also contains viruses, but Huang Qiulan was actually hiding far away at that time, and there was no trace of blood at all. She said, "It's okay, why don't you go first?" "Where am I going? I'm an awakened person. It's okay to drink zombie blood. You hurry up and deal with it. The medical warehouse can automatically handle it for you. If you become a zombie, I will be the first to blow your head off." Huang Qiulan, Xia Bai, who came out of the battleship side by side with Hao Zhuang later, looked at this scene and asked in a low voice with some confusion, "What's wrong with her? Why is she so angry today?" Hao Zhuang glanced sympathetically at Huang Qiulan, who was frightened by Baelan, and went to deal with the injury obediently, and whispered, "The load of supplies we got from Zhu City is gone, isn't it? She is very angry." Xia Bai looked a little weird. In fact, losing supplies is nothing in the apocalypse. As he said a long time ago, having supplies does not mean that you will live, and having no supplies does not mean that you will die. Especially when traveling through the city, trucks of supplies are the most important thing. It's easy to lose the whole car. Moreover, the situation at that time was that as soon as the fireworks truck exploded, the contents of their truck were ignited on the spot. There were extreme mutants behind, and the supplies could not be saved, no matter what point. However, with the battleship in hand, they are about to go to Shengjing to establish a survivor base, so it doesn't really matter at the moment. At this time, Baelan turned around and said, "What are you talking about? What are you going to do?" Xia Bai thought for a while, took 2 steps forward, came to Baelan, and said, "I originally wanted to use this repair time to deal with the approaching zombies, but we should have a talk." Baelan said, "What's wrong?" Xia Bai thought for a while and said, "Well, although a truckload of supplies is lost, we are still there, right? After we establish our own base, we can also grow corn by ourselves. Who wants to plant corns?" Baelan glanced at Xia Bai angrily. The two of them looked at each other in silence for a moment, and finally Baelan burst out laughing and said, "I understand the truth. Actually, I was just thinking that we found those things together in Zhu City, and most of them were sorted by leaking." Yes, she couldn't finish her words, because at this moment, a guy entered the field. Yi Hanyu walked over step by step with Chen Yingying's support. She put one arm around Chen Yingying's neck and the other around Baelan's neck. She also held a bottle of Erguo Tao in each hand. She hugged the 2 people on the left and right, smiling broadly. Actually not all the things in the car were lost. I took them out when we abandoned the car. How about it? Are you interested in taking a look?" Chen Yingying shrank her neck. "I won't drink anymore. Anyway, I won't drink anymore." Baelan had a gloomy face. "You are an injured person, and you still want to drink? Despite the physique of an awakened person, your injury has not improved for so many days. Don't you know why?" "Yi Hanyu, why do I feel that you are the same as my teacher, Hao Zhuang? Boss, let's go quickly and go out to kill zombies." Xia Bai smiled and walked out of the battleship with Hao Zhuang, but what he was thinking about at the moment was hurry up and complete the upgrade of the battleship. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, The Upgrade Bus. The battleship has accumulated a lot of energy points. At this moment, the number of energy points in Xia Bai's hand has even reached more than 13,000 point a few months ago. This was a terrifying figure that he would have never dared to imagine point. But these energy points are enough to upgrade a 4th level battleship point. There is no absolutely safe place in the apocalypse. The sooner you upgrade, the sooner your strength will increase. Especially now, many weapons and equipment in the battleship are seriously worn out, especially the 30mm caliber bullets. Xia Bai is now holding the total number of them is not enough to survive a big battle point in Xia Bai's view. This is also an opportunity to shuffle the cards, directly upgrade the battleship to level 4, and then use energy points to create more advanced weapons. At the moment, the intelligent zombies have just been killed by Xia Bai. Li Jinggang used Black Hawk 13 to conduct some reconnaissance. What is certain is that they have at least got rid of the intelligent zombies. This is the best gap period. Xia Bai, all you have to do is find a safe and large enough place to upgrade the warship point. Xia Bai planned to upgrade on the spot. The area around this highway rest stop was relatively empty. They had driven for nearly an hour from Xinjiang to here, covering a considerable distance. According to the picture sent back by Black Hawk 13, in this area, there is a village due east of them, with some zombies in it, and in the north and south, there is also a group of zombies wandering in the wilderness, without a target, with real walking zombies in that area. Wander around the area point. Xia Bai had no intention of alarming these zombies. He knew that, as long as he opened fire, more zombies would be attracted. When the battleship was being upgraded, and he couldn't move, then he would be in real trouble. Xia Bai took action immediately, first clearing away the zombies in the service area. The service area was not large, with the gas station in front of it, and the restaurant and warehouse behind it, and there were only a few rooms in total. On the other side, Yi Hanai, who failed to drink Erguo Tao as she wished, and Balan unceremoniously replaced it with a bottle of mineral water. Yi Hanai, who looked unhappy about this, but Chen Yingying, who was hugging her neck like a little chicken next to her, looked inexplicably relieved. To be honest, among them now, Balan feels like the butler of everyone in the team. He always pays attention to everything, no matter how small it is. However, precisely because of Balan's sister-like attitude, Xia Bai saved a lot of things, and he could rest assured about most of the little things. The battleship has already entered the repair process, and some parts of it are flickering with a certain light, which is similar to the light when the battleship is upgraded. Before, Xia Bai only thought that this was the sound and light effect of the system, but later he finally figured out that this, in fact, the battleship is converting energy points to reconstruct the structure it needs. The repair process of the battleship is fully automatic, it just takes time, but Xia Bai's solar matrix is not included in this repair sequence. After Xia Bai came back from cleaning up the zombies, he and Hao Zuan climbed onto the roof of the car with the toolbox to check the solar matrix. The rightmost one of the matrix, composed of 12 solar cells, was blown up. Fortunately, Xia Bai activated the warship's outer fire extinguishing device in time, so that it did not affect the other solar cells too much. These things have hundreds of energy points after all. These gadgets are made of military-grade materials, and the main bodies of most solar cells are not seriously damaged by the explosion. However, one of the solar cells was torn to pieces at the back. That's probably the result of that extreme mutant. Xia Bai accepted this calmly. This is the real situation in the apocalypse. If you don't follow the army across provinces, there will be a lot of trouble. People like them will be ambushed by intelligent zombies, while the weaker survivors will have to face the threat of zombie waves. Danger is bound to exist, and losses are bound to occur, but overall, it's actually pretty good. Xia Bai's battleship is fine. He has more than 10,000 energy points. When he upgrades to level 4, he will be able to directly incorporate the solar matrix into it through the upgrade process. The system of the battleship is transformed together and completely becomes a module of the battleship. In this way, the damage of the solar matrix due to being too fragile can be avoided. After this series of preliminary preparations were completed, Xia Bai drove the warship to the warehouse behind the service area on the highway. After clearing it, he directly gave the order to the system to enter the upgrade process of the warship. System, pay 10,000 energy points and upgrade my battleship immediately. Dear Captain, do you plan to upgrade the battleship now? Yes, the Upgrade request has been confirmed. The system upgrade has begun, and energy points have begun to be used. The estimated upgrade time is 96 hours, 0 minutes and 00 seconds. Please wait. It has been detected that the battleship has a self-assembled energy module. Does it need to be integrated into the battleship's system for optimized defense and transformation? Yes, optimization and transformation require you to pay an additional 400 energy points. Xia Bai now has many energy points, and these 400 points are really nothing. He nodded immediately. The solar cell module can be integrated into the main body of the battleship. For him, it is the best thing. The upgrade is about to begin. During the upgrade process, please ensure that the battleship is in a safe environment. Xia Bai took a step back slightly. In front of his eyes, the battleship began to glow. He covered it with a big cloth he had prepared and walked out directly. When Huan Qiulan noticed Xia Bai, her eyes lit up slightly. She finally found an opportunity and walked over to Xia Bai, ready to recommend herself. At the same moment, Xia Bai and the others were settling down in the service area for renovations outside Xinjiang City. In the direction of the water tower, this place is already a mess. Yang Chengzi and the others have already evacuated, and the living people have given up this area. The flames burning on the ground have not yet been extinguished, but this place has completely turned into a paradise for zombies. The zombies coming from the direction of Xinjiang chased for a long distance. The tide of zombies was stretched for several kilometers, and a large zombie fault appeared in the middle. Therefore, after the zombies completely lost their target, this piece of zombies, the tide became more loose, and the zombies wandered aimlessly. Because of the slightest noise, they would huff and puff together, heads colliding, and bodies overlapping, but each other was unaware of all this in their current life. Only living people can make them produce real behavioral responses. This is a horrific place of death. In today's apocalypse, cities are huge tombs. They are full of the atmosphere of the modern civilized society, but they are also places where the living dead roam. The more prosperous the city, the denser the zombies. They stagger around when they are quiet, like a dying old man, but as soon as he discovers your existence, he will act like a beast in an instant. And in this zombie wasteland outside the new capital city, in the corner of the unextinguished flames, a hand suddenly stretched out from the flesh and blood, mud everywhere. A person struggled to roll out, revealing its broken body. A miserable body. That was the Shroud zombie from before. It jumped out of the car at the last moment when the missile came, but was overturned by the shockwave and concussion in the blink of an eye. However, before its body, that could not feel the pain at all, stood up again. It was swarmed by dense fire waves like moths rushing to a flame. Swallowed by the tide of corpses, it was not killed by the explosion, but was almost trampled to death by its own kind. At this moment, it sat on the ground, silently watching the scene in front of it, and finally slowly picked up a handful of blood from the ground and stuffed it into its mouth. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. It's time to go to Sanjiang. Brothers, give us your support. Chapter 137, The Girl in Erguotao. February 8th, 2019 at 2300 hours. The 7th hour of battleship upgrades. The zombies in and around the entire service area have been cleared away. The battleship cannot be used due to the upgrade, so everyone temporarily settled in the restaurant. Looking out of the window in this location, they can see the location of the small warehouse where the battleship is stored. Moreover, Xia Bai also arranged a lot of detectors to distinguish zombies and living people there to avoid any oversights and interrupt the upgrade of the battleship. Dinner was already over. Everyone was extremely exhausted from this day's experience, and almost everyone had fallen asleep by now. Xia Bai, on the other hand, couldn't sleep. He was originally guarding the warship in the warehouse, but he couldn't fall asleep, even after tossing and turning. He didn't know what it was, so he lit a cigarette and walked out. The night in the apocalypse is deserted, but the stars and moon hang high in the sky, quiet and peaceful. This may also be the benefit of the apocalypse. In the apocalypse, as long as you don't encounter zombies, you can experience the true tranquility that is difficult to experience before the apocalypse. He turned his eyes around and found another person sitting on the small slope on the other side of the highway. Xia Bai was a little surprised. He thought about it, turned around and locked the warehouse door behind him. After confirming that all other equipment was running normally, he took steps and walked in that direction. Although there was nothing here, there were no zombies and no other survivors, but Xia Bai was still very cautious in the apocalypse. You can be careless or careless, but once an accident does happen, you will definitely pay a heavy price for it. Moreover, when it comes to battleships, Xia Bai must be cautious and cautious. Even with Hao Zhuang and others, he walked through the night in the deserted road, and when he came to that person, he realized that the other person was Yi Hanyu. The female high school student sat on the ground with a straight face, holding a bottle of Erguo Tao in her hand. She was squinting her eyes and looking into the distance. She took a sip and drank happily. Even when Xia Bai came over, she was at a loss. She noticed that it wasn't until Xia Bai made a sound that she turned around in surprise. "Hey, why are you here, Xia Bai Dao? I should be asking you this. What are you doing here? If you don't sleep at night, it's night duty." Yi Hanyu replied matter-of-factly, and as he said that, he gave Xia Bai the Erguo Tao in his hand. Xia Bai was surprised. "Why are you always the one on night watch?" Yi Hanyu said, "I can't sleep, and I have nothing to do. Originally this class was supposed to be that girl Chen Yingying. I wanted her to have a good sleep, so I came over. I just took this opportunity to have a few sips. That guy Bailan and me, just like the teacher. I have no choice but to drink here." Xia Bai looked at this guy's careless expression and couldn't help but said, "Are you on night shift, or are you here drinking?" "All of them." "You didn't notice when I came here? Are you too careless?" Yi Hanyu said. "Where is it? I'm prepared. If a zombie comes and bites me, I won't die, let alone get infected. It will be discovered naturally. If someone comes to cause trouble for us, if it is a survivor, if you shoot me, won't I know?" As she spoke, she raised a flare gun she held in her other hand and said, "As long as I get beaten, I dare not say anything else. The flare will definitely be able to shoot out." Xia Bai twitched the corners of his mouth and couldn't help but said, "Are you so not afraid of death?" Yi Hanyu took a sip of wine, stretched out her hand, and handed it to Xia Bai, saying, "What's the use of being afraid of death? Only those who are not afraid of death will live longer. My sisters were all afraid of death, and they all died." Xia Bai couldn't help but glance at Yi Hanyu. Although this girl was not very old, her mind and thoughts were much more mature and understanding than ordinary people. It could even be said that few people in the apocalypse could be like Yi Hanyu. At this point, she has such thoughts. Yi Hanyu glanced at him and said, I'm not as powerful as I said. I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of others dying. I'm afraid that one day, everyone around me will die and no one will be left. Now, I'm left alone, wandering in a city full of zombies, alone, with no one to talk to, and I have to worry about being killed by zombies when I sleep. I have no other purpose except to live." Xia Bai said, "If there is such a day, you will take the initiative to find other living people. Why do you say this, as if you have experienced it yourself?" Xia Bai smiled and said nothing. Yi Hanyu didn't care. She smiled and said, "If it really comes to this, I won't be able to live anymore. I will just find a 30-story high-rise building and jump off directly. I have grown up so much in this life, and I just want to experience what it feels like to jump off a building." Xia Bai twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "Can't you just parachute directly on the battleship from now on?" Yi Hanyu took a sip of wine and was stunned for a moment after hearing the words. She scratched her head and said a little cutely, "Yeah, why should I jump off the building? I can just use your battleship to parachute later." But it's not easy for others to ask. I would like to ask, what is this battleship of yours? Has it been upgraded in the past 4 days? Xia Bai did not hide the current status and upgrade of the battleship. There was no point in hiding it. In 4 days, the battleship would undergo earth-shaking changes. Needless to say, everyone could imagine at point, but Xia Bai didn't mention anything about the more details. Xia Bai would not hide certain things, but he would not go into details about the situation of the battleship. The less others know about the details, the better. That will be good for the battleship, Xia Bai himself, and everyone. Of course, Xia Bai would not hide what should be said. He would not make the mistake of killing others by concealing information. Baelan and the others may have some guesses about this, but since they know that Xia Bai doesn't want to say anything, they won't ask again. This is the most basic respect between each other. The more familiar they are, the less likely they are to ask in detail. After all, everyone has secrets, and everyone has things they don't want others to know. How bad of a friend would it take to blindly pursue secrets that others don't want to tell, especially something like a battleship, where everyone can see it? Knowing how special this thing is, no one wants to show excessive concern or covetation. Everyone has a bottom line, and that is something that cannot be touched. Therefore, Xia Bai just shook his head and smiled without any intention of answering. Yihan didn't ask any more questions. The two were silent for a moment, but Yihan spoke first. The girl said, "What do you plan to do in the future? For now, let's work with the military to get what we need." Xia Bai thought for a while and said, "I will help the military build a survivor base, and I will use this to build an apocalyptic war legion with warships as a core. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation." Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 138 The Sneaky Figure. Chapter 139 Sneaky Figure. What Xia Bai said now was indeed his current thoughts. Battleships are actually fine when they are at the second and third levels. To put it bluntly, they are more like an integrated sea, land and air aircraft than a battleship. They are more than enough for single body confrontation and apocalyptic survival, but if you want to do other things with it, not so likely anymore. But when a battleship reaches level 4, or even level 5 in the future, its status and combat capabilities will change. Level 4 will truly become an aerial fort, and level 5 may even have the ability to dominate the entire Earth's sky. Upgrading a battleship requires energy points. The number of energy points directly determines how many levels of energy the battleship itself has that can be used for transformation and expansion. The two balance each other, just like building a building. You cannot use a few bricks to flatten the bottom. To build a building with more than 20 floors, there must be a matching number of bricks, tiles and building materials. It only takes 100 energy points to upgrade from level 1 to level 2, and it only takes 1000 energy points to upgrade from level 2 to level 3. This means that even if the previous level 3 battleships are upgraded, the level of upgrades will be very limited. But in Xia Bai's view, every upgrade of the battleship from level 4 onwards will usher in earth-shaking changes. Of course, the energy points required for each level up are 10 times higher than before, but this also means that the battleship has more materials, and every upgrade will inevitably usher in huge changes and evolutions. According to Xia Bai's calculations, before the alien creatures arrive, he must at least reach level 5 or even level 6 to have the possibility of fighting against them. And level 6 battleships are likely to be the existences that span the sky. What they need manpower will inevitably increase. The relationship between him and the alien creatures is actually surprisingly simple. Either he is killed, or he kills the other person. This is pure species hostility and killing. Therefore, Xia Bai's response is undoubtedly extremely simple, which is to strengthen himself. He promised the military that the purpose of establishing a survivor base was also here. It was just to get what everyone needed. For Xia Bai, establishing a survivor base is just a means. What he wants is for the survivor base to provide support for his warships in the early stage and to train crews and even marine troops for his warships in the future. Moreover, Xia Bai also hopes that with the help of the survivor base he has established, when the conflicts within the Changbai Mountain survivor base develop to the most serious in the future, he can really get involved and prevent the Changbai Mountain survivor base from being destroyed. Or even destroyed. In order to ensure the safety and integrity of the entire 3 eastern provinces, and to do this, the force of warships alone is not enough. He needs people and the support of local forces in the Changbai Mountain survivor base. Xia Bai estimated that at that moment, his survivor base and battleships would be formed. After stabilizing the survivor base in Changbai Mountain, it would be time to open up the safe zone in the 3 eastern provinces. He wants to create a rear area here. When the alien creatures arrive, and he rushes around with his warships, this is where he will rest and settle down. It is like a dock that can be used in reverse when necessary. Provide shelter and safety to Xia Bai. Xia Bai is not a god, and the battleship is not invincible. Faced with alien creatures he has never seen before, Xia Bai has no confidence in his heart. His focus is still on the battleship, but the external environment is equally important. Therefore, what he told Xia at this moment was really his true idea, to use the survivor base to raise the battleship. However, Xia didn't seem to understand the ambition in Xia Bai's words. She had a carefree personality and rarely thought about too much unless necessary. Now she drank again, and her face was red. Just nodded confusedly, and realized that it was hard for me to say that I didn't understand what you meant, so his eyes wandered around, trying to find something else to distract the topic. She didn't know if God was helping Xia, but with a slight turn of her head, she discovered something unusual. She suddenly pointed to a corner quite far away and said, "There is someone there." Xia Bai looked in that direction. He didn't see anything at first glance. He was about to question whether Xia had drunk too much, but then he also saw that person pointed was about several hundred meters away. The night was dark and the surrounding terrain was undulating. It was difficult to notice what was going on over there without looking carefully. At this moment, Xia Bai actually saw that there was an off-road vehicle over there, and a sneaky and obscene figure was wandering there. He didn't know what he was doing. Looking at it from this angle, it seemed that like zombies. Xia also said, "I can't see clearly, but are they zombies?" As soon as she finished saying this, she noticed that Xia Bai beside her suddenly got up, turned her head, and lowered her body, and ran towards the house behind her. She was stunned for a moment, thought about it, took a sip of wine, held the flare gun in her hand, and slowly lowered her body. Within a moment, she saw Xia Bai running back with a sniper rifle, lying down next to Xia, and setting it up. Xia Bai finally saw the scene over there clearly. Through the night vision equipment on the sniper rifle, there was indeed a vague shadow squatting next to the off-road vehicle, half of its body hidden behind the door of the off-road vehicle. In this apocalyptic night, where abandoned vehicles were everywhere, the other party already seemed very hidden. It's hard for Xia to see him at a glance. However, in Xia Bai's opinion, this was probably complete luck and coincidence. Xia's reconnaissance ability is not as good as Xia Bai's. Although the other party's hiding skills are not very good, she still has more luck in discovering the hidden person at a glance. That was obviously not a zombie. Even if it was an intelligent zombie. However, under Xia Bai's special scope, this guy's movements were clearly visible. Xia Bai noticed that the guy was squatting behind the car, using a telescope to look around furtively. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but it was Xia Bai who was looking over here right now, and the other party was also paying attention again. The rest stop is adjacent to the highway. It is an open area with loose and simple buildings. There are not many bunkers on the outside, because winter has just come to an end. There are no weeds outside. Although Xia Bai has deliberately hidden himself, the other party is still there. In an instant, he saw Xia Bai here, and also noticed the gun in Xia Bai's hand. He immediately felt like he was dying. Under Xia Bai's gaze, this guy threw away the telescope in his hand and hurriedly went back. Climb into the car and run away. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. I got a fan title, Herbal Tea Wine Gang. If you are interested, you can claim it. Chapter 139. Give it a try first. The man acted extremely decisively. He jumped into the car and immediately started the off-road vehicle. The roar of the engine could be heard from a long distance away, which was particularly conspicuous in the quiet night. He turned the front of the car, almost ran away. Xia seemed to want to say something, but she drank too much and lay on the ground again. She felt a little uncomfortable, so she burped cutely. Xia Bai ignored her and ran away when he saw her. Although he was a little confused, his reaction was very fast, and he shot directly. At this distance, Xia Bai's sniper rifle was still very accurate. Even if the opponent got into the car, he had the ability to shoot a headshot, but he did not do so. The first shot only hit the driver's seat of the off-road vehicle. From the ceiling, one could clearly see that a 12.7mm sniper round had hit it, tearing a big hole there. However, the person driving the car did not stop at all. Instead, He drove farther away, as if risking his life, and tried his best to escape. And Xia Bai was not ambiguous. The meaning of his shot was very clear. It was a warning. Since you ignored my warning, then, Xia Bai directly fine-tuned the muzzle of the gun, and after a second or so of judgment, he fired, and the second shot was fired in response. With this shot, the off-road vehicle suddenly exploded with blood, its speed slowed down sharply, and then it slid forward for a distance, and stopped. Immediately afterwards, Xia Bai stood up from his position with the gun in his arms, pressed his waist, circled from where he was just now, and approached the off-road vehicle. Seeing Xia Bai rushing out, Yi Hanai also followed her out. She put the signal gun on her waist, pulled out her pistol, and said from behind, "Wait for me." Xia Bai said without looking back, "Help me guard the surroundings, and pay attention to zombies and other possible survivors." As soon as he said this, he heard a strange noise. Then he turned his head and glanced, and saw in the direction of the rest stop behind him. Black Hawk 13 was rising into the sky, flying rapidly in this direction at high altitude. Obviously, it was Balan who was sleeping inside, and they were disturbed. After all, they are the ones who have survived for such a long time in the apocalypse. No matter how deeply they sleep, they will wake up as soon as there is any abnormal noise, and enter combat status in the shortest time. Huang Qiulan, Deng Jianguo and others who live for the apocalypse are also difficult to compare with. However, this time they made a fuss. There were no people around, and there were no zombies, just the off-road vehicle, and one person inside. When Xia Bai came over, the man was already dead. He actually intended to leave one alive. The second shot was on the torso, but it was blocked by the door of the off-road vehicle. Xia Bai was not a professional sniper, so it was difficult to judge. No matter where it hits, after that shot, although the opponent does not die immediately, he will take in more air, and lose less air. By the time Xia Bai and Yi Hanai come over, they will be dead. Therefore, this is not an intelligent zombie, and judging from the appearance and behavior pattern, it is not a member of the military. There was blood on the driver's seat, making the man's death look quite horrific. Yi Hanai, who was following Xia Bai, glanced at it, and couldn't help but said, "Why did it take you so long to shoot? Let's try shooting first." Xia Bai's response was very relaxed, but he noticed Yi Hanai's rather pained expression, thought about it, and said, "This person ran away when he saw my gun. Probably there are two possibilities. First, he is an ordinary survivor. When he sees someone pointing a sniper rifle at him, and the enemy is unknown, he is very likely to turn around and run away, because there are many people who hunt for prey in the apocalypse. People who take pleasure in killing ordinary survivors, and even some soldiers, will secretly hunt survivors for pleasure. Therefore, from this point of view, it is understandable that he turned around and ran away. Second, he is our enemy, and was sent to investigate our situation. This conjecture is also very tenable. After all, he is observing our situation with a telescope, and noticed that I discovered him. He pointed his sniper rifle at him, and then turned around and ran away. I couldn't tell which of the two he was, and I couldn't just let him go, so I fired the first shot. I deliberately hit the roof of the driver's seat with the first shot. The position is very tricky. It cannot be a missed shot. It is an absolute warning. If the opponent is an ordinary survivor, he will definitely stop the car, but he did not. Instead, he continued to run forward with a guilty conscience. Therefore, it can be concluded that he is not an ordinary survivor but a rusher. He wanted us to come, so I fired the second shot to keep him listening. To Xia Bai's series of analysis, Yi Hanai couldn't help but open her mouth wide. After being stunned for a long time, she said, "What if he didn't expect so much at all?" Xia Bai shook his head and said, "How long has it been since the end of the world? A survivor who is cautious enough to use a telescope to observe everywhere in the middle of the night must be someone who is afraid of death. How could he be driven away by a sniper gun and run around risking his life? I'll go. Let's take a shot first and try this operation." "You think this operation is so reasonable?" Yi Hanai said. "Why don't you blow out the tire so that he can't drive away?" She stared at Xia Bai in front of her and complained, "Why do I feel like you just want to shoot at?" This moment, Xia Bai leaned out and groped the body for a while saying, "The tire was blown out." He was hiding in the car waiting for us to get closer and fired cold shots. You should carry it or I should carry it. He really didn't find anything on the body that could confirm the identity of the other party. He only had a gun and a small pack of Aureus. He stood up and saw Yi Hanyu leaning against the off-road vehicle with a red face and holding a hand, a small pistol, and a bottle of Erguo Tau firmly held in the other hand. Xia Bai twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "You haven't finished drinking yet, Yi." Hanyu reached out and handed the wine in her hand to Xia Bai, smiling a little drunkenly. "I have 2 bottles, but did you find anything?" This girl obviously drank too much. Drink too much. He obviously doesn't have much drinking capacity, but he still drinks all day long. At this moment, Xia Bai finally realized what a wise choice Bailan had made in not letting this girl drink. Xia Bai shook his head. "There are no clues, but this person is probably from the 13 Kings. Yi." Hanyu widened her beautiful eyes and said in surprise, "Can you even guess this? To be able to find our location so accurately, it's probably because someone in the military was able to accurately find us through the military's channels, who had just been in contact with the military and sent people to follow us. We don't have many enemies in total. Besides the 13 Kings, who else could there be?" Xia Bai walked past Yi Hanyu, gave the girl a slap in the face, and said, "Drink less in the future. Drinking will lower your IQ, Yi." Hanayu's face flushed, and she looked at him blankly. She burped for a while, not knowing whether she understood what Xia Bai was talking about. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Please support me in any way. Chapter 140 Tobacco and Alcohol Control. Chapter 141 Tobacco and Alcohol Control. The 13 Kings people appeared faster than Xia Bai expected. And just as Xia Bai speculated, the reason why the 13 Kings came to the door at this moment must be through military channels. This also confirmed Yang Cheng's previous statement that the 13 Kings also had a military background. What kind of scientific research center is supporting them? After all, Xia Bai had just killed Li Ziping, so it was normal for the 13 Kings to come looking for him. After all, this was a force that established itself in the apocalypse with its cruel heart, and it must not suffer the suffering of being dumb, otherwise, their existence would depend on it. The huge prestige and deterrence no longer exist. No matter who the opponent is, the 13 Kings must find their way back. But people in the 13 Kings cannot all be reckless. Although the power of the 13 Kings originated from absolute force and unscrupulous means, if you want to gain a foothold in the human social class, unscrupulous means and force are not enough. Therefore, the 13 Kings' visit this time may not necessarily be to use force to regain the situation, or they may have other plans. Of course, no matter what the 13 Kings planned, it would not work with him. In Xia Bai's view, the 13 Kings are cancers caused by the collapse of the social system in the apocalypse. He will be more responsible for the destruction of the Changbai Mountain survivor base in the future. Anyway, they will fall out sooner or later. Now that there has been a break, Xia Bai, there is no plan to carry out any transfer or relief. However, Xia Bai can't spare any time at the moment. Compared with eradicating the 13 Kings, establishing a survivor base, and upgrading battleships are the most important and urgent matters at the moment. Moreover, the forces in the Changbai Mountain survivor base are complicated. He is going there now. If you go against the 13 Kings, you are likely to be trapped in the whirlpool of the Changbai Mountain survivor base, which will delay both the upgrade and the establishment of the survivor base. Instead of going head to head with others, when you are still young, it is better to seize the time to develop. The 13 Kings are just a small role, and the alien creatures in the future are the real enemies that will keep Xia Bai night awake and restless. It's only been half a year since the end of the world, and Xia Bai has already become urgent. Upgrading a 4th level battleship requires 10,000 energy points. Upgrading to a 5th level battleship requires 100,000 energy points, and upgrading a 6th level battleship requires an astronomical 1 million. Without a 5th level or even 6th level battleship, Xia Bai really doesn't have one. There is no guarantee of resisting the attack of alien creatures, let alone survival. Although as the battleship level increases, the speed at which he obtains energy points will also greatly increase. But 1.1 million. This is not a small amount after all. Especially, Xia Bai is even more worried about the early appearance of intelligent zombies. Will it mean that alien creatures will also descend on the Earth early for some reason? Although Xia Bai seemed to be making progress step by step, there was nothing he could do about it. Rushing for quick success would only be counterproductive, but he was actually more anxious than anyone else. Of course, he would not take the initiative to cause trouble for the 13 kings for the time being. If the 13 kings came to him on their own, that would be another matter. However, Xia Bai's battleship is still in the process of upgrading. If the 13 kings really come to kill them, it will be somewhat troublesome. After all, if a conflict breaks out, there are several buildings in front of and behind the rest stop, and the outside environment is quite open. A little interference may cause the battleship upgrade to be interrupted, which is not worth the gain. However, for more than 2 consecutive days after the spy appeared, no one from the 13 kings appeared again. Only occasionally zombies came from the surrounding area looking for the breath of the living, and they were eliminated one by one. Didn't cause much trouble. Therefore, the situation here was surprisingly quiet, and the new members also had time to get to know each other. Baolan and others were fine, but Huang Qiulan seemed extremely excited during this period. Shi, Dong Jianguo and others had already hit a small group, and the middle-aged female boss has put out 1,000,000 points of fighting spirit, being active and building good relationships, even if there is not even a shadow of the survivor base. That Xia Bai said, but she is already actively preparing for this after the previous battle outside Xinjiang City. Others were more than frightened, but Huang Qiulan was keenly aware that Xia Bai was a legendary super potential stock in the apocalypse, and that terrifying aircraft alone was enough to build a foundation for survival. With the capital of the survivor base, coupled with the support of the military, establishing a survivor base and maintaining its existence and development for a long time is almost a certainty. It is just a matter of time now. In Huang Qiulan's view, as long as she follows Xia Bai and survives this period, when the survivor base is established, she will be a veteran level existence, and when she becomes bigger in the future, Huang Qiulan is looking forward to the future. In her eyes, the end of the world seems to have become meaningful. This may be the thinking of the legendary strong woman. However, Yi Hanyu has been very depressed recently. With the last personal experience, Xia Bai and Baolan began to jointly control Yi Hanyu. Yi Hanyu, from the shocking incident on New Year's Eve to now, has been injured all over, but has barely rested. Instead, he relies on his strong physique as an awakened person to run around and jump around, drinking and drinking all day long, especially after Xia Bai found out that this girl was one of those people whose IQ plummeted as soon as she drank. He was even more determined to let the only 2 awakened people in the team take time to recover and stay away from alcohol at the same time. As a result, Yi Hanyu's life became painful. Xia Bai takes care of her, Baolan takes care of her, and even Chen Yingying takes care of her. I no longer have any freedom in life. At 7:13 PM on February 11th, 2019, the 95th hour of the battleship upgrade, Yi Hanyu was squatting in the corner of the cafeteria of the rest stop, holding kefir and complaining. If you ignore her imageless, her words seemed very cute and cute. She glanced at the kefir in her hand, then glanced at Xia Bai over there, and said, "But you are still awesome. It's been more than half a year since the end of the world, and you can still make this kind of unexpected kefir. It's really yes." Chen Yingying stood beside her and stared at her. "In the future, drink less and smoke less." Yi Hanyu rolled her eyes and said, "Let me tell you, that night at Chengyu Middle School, I was scared to death by the baby zombie. If I hadn't had a sip of wine, could I have run out with you?" Chen Yingying, that's your credit, not the wines. Just as Yi Hanyu was about to say something, on the other side, Li Jinggyang, who had been patrolling the surrounding area with a drone, suddenly said, "A convoy is coming. Brothers, please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Please support me." Chapter 141. Let them come over. It was a mighty convoy, with a modified car in front and several trucks behind. It drove in from the vast darkness and was discovered. As soon as it entered Xia Bai's warning range point, there were nearly 20 vehicles in total, and from the outside, there were a variety of heavy and light weapons. In the apocalypse, such a convoy was definitely considered luxurious. Black Hawk 13 did not deliberately hide. Therefore, they obviously noticed that their whereabouts had been discovered. They had no intention of hiding, but they did not go too far. They were still far away from where Xia Bai and the others were. They stopped more than 300 meters away, just in a position where both of them could see each other. Immediately afterwards, a middle-aged man jumped out of the car in front, raised his hands to the drone in the sky, as if to indicate that he had no ill intentions, and then he said to the drone, "I'm Luo Yuda. I came here specifically for Mr. Xia, and on behalf of the 13 Kings, I apologize for the trouble I caused Mr. Xia in Liujia town." Of course, Xia Bai and the others could see the situation and hear the sounds here through the drone, but they were not too surprised by this man claiming to be the 13th king. Apart from the 13 kings, who else can come up with such a battle and come towards them with a clear purpose? What's more, with the presence of the spy from the previous 2 days, everyone had already expected the arrival of the 13 kings people. And they were not too surprised now. At this moment, the very elegant middle-aged man who called himself Luo Yuda said, "There is no other meaning in bringing so many people. Mr. Xia and I both know that we are not enough people for Mr. It's just that I brought Mr. Xia a cart full of rice, flour, and oil. In the apocalypse, with war and chaos, there must be some manpower to ensure that these things are delivered to Mr. Xia accurately, right? To tell the truth, Li Zipping is a cancer-like existence on our side. Mr. Xia wiped him out, which can be regarded as helping us get rid of the harm. His death also made us see the internal problems, so I came here today for no other reason than to say thank you. And besides 3 trucks of rice, noodles and oil, I also have a real gift of thanks that I want to give to Mr. Xia. I wonder if we can meet and talk after." His series of words, everyone on Xia Bai's side looked at each other a little bit. Everyone's impression of the 13 kings was not very good. When they were in Liujia town, Bailan and the others almost died at the hands of Li Zipping. In the eyes of Hao Zhuang and others, the 13 kings were absolute enemies. As soon as Luo Yuda opened his mouth, Hao Zhuang actually wanted to suggest that he kill these 13 kings directly. But Luo Yuda spoke so beautifully. Xia Bai and the others killed Li Zipping, one of the 13 kings, and now Luo Yuda said that they had helped the 13 kings. As the saying goes, you can't hit someone with a smiling face. Moreover, someone sent 3 full trucks of rice, flour, and oil in one go, crossing half of Kyrgyzstan. This is simply heroic. At this time, Yi Hanyu from behind said, "This guy is so talkative, let's kill them." Hao Zhuang also nodded. Although he was a little confused by what Luo Yuda said, he could understand the truth clearly. These people can't believe it. "Big brother, let's." Xia Bai shook his head. He glanced at his watch and silently calculated. At this moment, there were nearly 30 minutes left until the battleship upgrade was completed, so he said, "Let them come." Hao Zhuang frowned and said, "Let him come here to fight." He knew that the battleships were being upgraded, but he really didn't take these 13 kings seriously. The individual firepower in their hands was more than enough to deal with these people. Xia Bai shook his head and said, "No, I'll talk to him." This time, everyone seemed a little surprised. They all knew Xia Bai's attitude towards the 13 kings, but they didn't expect that Xia Bai would actually plan to talk to Luo Yuda. The 13 kings, of course. Xia Bai has nothing to talk about with the 13 kings, but the battleship is in the final stage of upgrading. Although they are worthy of their side, the 13 kings side only has more than 20 cars, and Xia Bai's side is flat. If his posture really started to fight, his battleship upgrade would be 100% interrupted. Xia Bai was not afraid of this group of people, but once they took action and his warship upgrade process was interrupted, it would be a penny wise and pound foolish. Can't do anything now. Therefore, he decided to talk to the other party and delay it for a while. In fact, when Xia Bai saw this convoy, he realized that the 13 kings probably did not come here to fight this time. Although there were many people coming from the other side, they were not enough to see in front of his battleship. Li Zipping would make a mistake. As a survivor force, the 13 kings will not make mistakes. The 13 kings are arrogant and arrogant, but if they were arrogant and arrogant, they would not be able to disrupt a survivor base and expand and become stronger like a balloon. Point for them. Xia Bai is also an extremely powerful being. When they meet Xia Bai in the wild, with the current force of the 13 kings, if they want to capture Xia Bai, they will probably have to pay huge losses, and both sides will suffer in a fight with Xia Bai. This is what the 13 kings do not want to see. Although they have lost one person, they are even more eager to repair the relationship, because with the combat effectiveness and maneuverability shown by Xia Bai's battleship, if Xia Bai starts to retaliate, the consequences will be it is also unimaginable for the 13 kings. Of course, the 13 kings didn't know that Xia Bai had long wanted to get rid of them all from the bottom of his heart. If they showed sincerity now, it would be just playing the piano to a cow. Chen Qianxin couldn't help but said, "Brother Xia, they might have something in mind." Bai, Lan said at this moment, "Then let them come." She looked at Xia Bai in front of her and smiled slightly. She thought about the last time she resisted the zombies at the Bingcheng prison survivor base, and she had vaguely guessed the reason why Xia Bai wanted to meet and talk with Luo Yuda now. She looked at everyone and said directly, "Let's all take action. Although we have invited people over, we must be ready to take action at any time." At that moment, no one in the room said anything. After such a long time, Xia Bai and Bailan had become the number 1 and number 2 in the team. Both of them spoke up and agreed, not to mention the others. What would he object to? Li Jinggang also directly turned back to the Black Hawk 13. After waiting for a moment, Luo Yuda realized what the Black Hawk 13's turn meant. He took a deep breath, got into the car behind him again, and drove forward. Go. Please collect it. Please vote for recommendation. Asking for all kinds of support. Chapter 142. There is no future over there in Changbei Mountain. The 13 kings' large convoy did not move. Luo Yuda only drove one car and brought 2 people over. In Luo Yuda's view, Xia Bai's battleship is here, and it doesn't make sense how many people he brings. It's better to just come here and show his sincerity. Huang Qiulan and Dang Jianguo were greeted outside. They didn't know much about battleships, and Huang Qiulan was sophisticated and well spoken, so she directly introduced Luo Yuda and the others. During this process, Luo Yuda kept looking left and right, his eyes sweeping around, and he didn't calm down until he entered the restaurant in front. There were only Xia Bai and Yi Hanyu in the restaurant. Yi Hanyu was still squatting in the corner drinking sour milk. Squinting at Luo Yuda, who walked in with a half smile, but not a smile, a delinquent girl in full state. Luo Yuda knew that this bad girl was an awakener. Xia Bai came forward to greet him now. Xia Bai was all smiles today. When he came up, he greeted Luo Yuda for a few words before sitting down in the corner. The restaurant was empty. Huang Qiulan and the others also withdrew. In front of Luo Yuda, there was only a thin-looking girl and young man. But Luo Yuda was a little frightened. In his opinion, this kind of reception standard was simply too high. What happened in Liujia town has been reported back. Luo Yuda did his homework before coming here this time. He knew that the bad girl was an awakened person, and the young man named Xia Bai in front of him was a top awakened person. Not inferior to the existence of the 13 kings, but Luo Yuda was still very calm. After the simple politeness, he went straight to the subject and said, "Mr. Xia, after all, what happened in Liujia town is indeed our problem. He failed to control his own people, and attacked his own people when fighting zombies. Li Zipping is an absolute scum, and is in vain to be the 13th king. Li Zipping was dead, and this man had no scruples when talking about him." In response to such words, Xia Bai just smiled. He knew that if any other character dared to kill Li Zipping, the 13 kings would have gone up to kill him angrily. After all, the 13 kings got their start by being ruthless and ruthless, but if they want to gain a foothold and grow bigger, they must clearly distinguish between those who can be treated harshly and those who cannot be treated harshly. Luo Yuda smiled and said, "Li Zipping is dead, and it was Mr. Xia who personally eliminated the evil. While we, the 13 kings, are grateful, we must also do internal rectification and rectification. But the 13 kings and 13 kings are missing atop. What's going on with the awakened ones?" Our original intention was to recommend them locally, but later, there really was no suitable candidate, and we heard that Mr. Xia had not left Yi province, so we had other ideas. Having said this, Luo Yuda paused slightly and then said, I wonder if Mr. Xia and your people are interested in joining the 13 Kings. As soon as these words came out, Xia Bai was really surprised. Yi Hanayu, who was smoking in the corner, even looked up. Xia Bai immediately asked, what do you mean, Luo? Yuda smiled and said, Mr. Xia, don't get me wrong, I don't mean anything else. It's just that the 13 Kings are indeed vacant now, and the force in Mr. Xia's hands also makes us admire, and Mr. Xia also got rid of Li Zipping. We the 13 Kings lack people like Mr. Xia who can really do things and accomplish things, and you have also seen our strength. We are not short of supplies. Although we are a survivor force, we have connections with the big Chibals and the military in the Changbei Mountain survivor base. If Mr. Xia settles in the 13 Kings of Changbei Mountain, I dare not say that I will be rich and glorious, but at least I will have food and clothing, and no worries in the last days. This is the thank you gift we want to give Mr. Xia. In this era, not many people dare to boast about having no worries about food and clothing, and no worries in the end of the world point, but the 13 Kings have the confidence to say so. In the Changbei Mountain survivor base, their overwhelming power has gradually taken shape. The pie painted by Luo Yuda is too big and too tempting. Anyone else would have agreed to it here. But Xia Bai didn't think so. He knew that just like Luo Yuda's attitude towards Li Zipping, Luo Yuda was being arrogant and respectful to him at the moment. It wouldn't take long for Xia Bai to really go to the Changbei Mountain survivor base and reach their territory. I'm afraid the situation would be very different. It's different. When the time comes, it will be a question whether Xia Bai can become the 13 Kings. Li Zipping was just a man. Considering the nature and style of the 13 Kings organization, it was not surprising that he invited Xia Bai. In Xia Bai's view, this was the greed and ambition of the 13 Kings. They didn't care at all. Li Zipping's life and death. As long as they can invite Xia Bai to join, they can win back the key field and even get key shield technology from Xia Bai. Yang Chengxi has already revealed to Xia Bai before. The military behind the 3 Kings is the Changbei Mountain Scientific Research Center behind Wenwei. Xia Bai only saw absolute greed and desire. Although Xia Bai had not had much direct contact with the 13 Kings in his previous life, he had already known what kind of organization it was from the side. Be it Luo Yuda or Li Zipping, they were cunning or stupid, but the essence is the same. Cooperating with this group of people is like trying to get skin from a tiger. Xia Bai himself is not without strength, so there is no need to agree to the other party. From Luo Yuda's perspective, it was something else. He seemed confident. And the fact seemed to be exactly what he thought. Xia Bai quickly responded, okay. Xia Bai said the first sentence. Yi Hanayu and Luo Yuda's eyes became brighter and brighter. Xia Bai smiled and said, okay, then it's settled. From now on I will be a member of the 13 Kings. Luo Yuda took a deep breath. He did not expect that the owner of the Black Ghost would be so easy to fool, but he did not show his excitement. He still said calmly, Mr. Xia is willing to join the 13 Kings. It is ours. An honor. Then, when will Mr. Xia leave to return to the Changbei Mountain survivor base with us? At this moment, Luo Yuda could even imagine the sensational scene that he could cause in the Changbei Mountain survivor base by bringing back the legendary Black Ghost. However, Xia Bai smiled and said, go back to the Changbei Mountain survivor base. There seems to be no development and no future there. I'm planning to go to Shengjing to make a living. Please collect and support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 Run. Yi Hanayu's mouth opened wide in the back. Luo Yuda's smile froze for a second, and then he said, Mr. Xia, what does this mean? What he was thinking at the moment was, are you looking for a job? It's not interesting. Xia Bai seemed very sincere at this moment and said, the 13 kings are indeed a very powerful force at the moment, but in the end they are attached to the Changbai Mountain survivor base. No matter how powerful they are, they will not be able to do anything in the future. Most of us just become the leader of the Changbai Mountain survivor base, or we have to borrow the power of the military and others. Although we have become the leader, we still have to be restricted by others. But if we build our own survivor base and cultivate talents, then in the future, we will truly have a Changbai Mountain survivor base without being constrained by anyone. What do you think? Xia Bai seemed very sincere, and his words sounded like he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Luo Yuda was a little stunned. At a certain moment, he was really shaken by Xia Bai's words. Yes, in the Changbai Mountain survivor base, it depends on the face of the military and the government. But what if you build your own survivor base? So, is the opinion put forward by Mr. Xia Bai in front of me at this moment really a sincere consideration? Luo Yuda always felt that something was vaguely wrong. Xia Bai glanced at this guy, then looked at the time on the watch in his hand, smiled slightly, and said, well, you can go back first and think about it carefully. I will go to Liao province first to establish survivors base. Since you have a background in the military, it shouldn't be difficult to find me and contact me again, right? In this way, I will wait for good news and welcome the 13 kings to join me. After saying that, Xia Bai stood up directly and shook hands with the other party, showing a very obvious intention to see off the guests. Luo Yuda squinted his eyes and looked at Xia Bai in front of him and seemed to have reflected it. The light in his eyes flickered slightly, but he didn't say anything more. Instead, he smiled very friendly. After a few more polite words, Luo Yuda stood up directly, turned around and left with the people behind him. When they left the restaurant, Yi Hanyu, who was standing next to him, said in astonishment, they just left like that? Xia Bai shook his head and said, he probably saw something. Yi Hanyu frowned slightly and said, do we want to strike first? Xia Bai glanced at his watch. At this moment, there was still 1 minute before the battleship upgrade was completed. He smiled and said, that's not necessary. On the other side, Luo Yuda got on his off-road vehicle immediately, picked up his intercom device, and ordered to his fleet in the distance, drive all over here. Let's do it directly. Xia Bai and the others, leave no one behind. As soon as he gave this order, the deputy who was following him was shocked. Are you crazy? Can we beat them? And didn't he say that he is willing to join us, and when the time comes, we will have plenty of opportunities? Are you stupid? He is obviously fooling us, and he doesn't want to join the 13 kings at all. Luo Yuda said, but looked back, glancing in the direction of the rest stop where they were gradually being left behind. It seems he didn't even want to contact us, but he still did it, and even talked nonsense to us for a long time. Did you see his black ghost when you came here just now? The deputy also responded and said, what do you mean? Luo Yuda's eyes narrowed dangerously, and he said coldly, the last time they took action was in the suburbs of Xinjiang City. After that, they have been parked here. There are no supplies, no people, and not many zombies. Why are they here? Parked here for 4 whole days. I speculate that their aircraft probably had a problem during the previous battle in Xinjiang, and is now useless. That's why they stayed here for 4 days, and were willing to go along with our nonsense long time. Their aircraft can't be used. What we are doing now is just dealing with a group of ordinary survivors. There are so many of us. What are we afraid of? While they were talking, the 13 Kings convoy that had been parked a few hundred meters away had already started to move. Cars roared in one after another, and they directly used their machine guns to shoot at the vehicles over there from a long distance away. The rest stop was shot wildly. The night was broken by heavy gunfire, and gunpowder smoke filled the air. However, there was dead silence in the direction of the service area. There was no return fire, and no movement point at this time. Luo Yuda had retreated to a safe distance. He looked at his men rushing toward the rest stop not far away at high speed, and also looked at the service area, where the suppressed people were unable to fight back. A sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the deputy standing next to him and sneered. See, they are just strong. He couldn't finish what he said because at this moment, there was a loud noise over there, accompanied by a huge hum that shook the soul. Amidst the gunfire everywhere, Luo Yuda saw with his eyes, a ship as long as a nearly 20-meter long icy warship was slowly rising from the cargo hold behind the service area point. The battleship was dark and cold, with numerous heavy guns. From a distance, it looked like a giant whale showing its body under the sky point. As soon as it appeared, it brought unimaginable huge pressure to the field. The people of the 13 Kings who had been rushing forward just now were all scared. The driver of the car turned around and ran away, got out of the car, and started to rush. It was Xia running wildly point. The battleship was firing fiercely in the sky. When one shot came down, fire and mud splashed on the ground, and there was a sudden roar of ghosts and wolves. Luo Yuda was shocked. He slammed the telescope in his hand on the ground. How is this possible? This is not a black ghost at all. What kind of aircraft is this? Is it a shield helicarrier? Why did he have this thing just now? Don't take it out. Are you a psychopath? Are you trying to tease us by deliberately letting us judge that they are strong on the outside and strong on the inside? He was so angry that his mouth was full of smoke, but the deputy behind him was fighting. He looked at the battleships crossing the sky not far away and said in a trembling voice, "Boss, what should we do?" Luo Yuda said, "What should I do? Run. Tell them to spread out. There is only one person in his spaceship, and I still don't believe that we can all be caught in one fell swoop. This is the end of the line. I, Luo Yuda, will never be done with you." The 13 Kings people quickly dispersed, and the situation was just as Luo Yuda expected. Xia Bai had only one battleship, and it was impossible to catch up with everyone. However, Luo Yuda soon discovered that in the chaos, Xia Bai, I don't know why it locked onto myself. The battleship didn't chase anyone else at all, but just chased me away. Chapter 144 Saving. Chapter 145 Saving. Luo Yuda and the others were forced to stop before they could get far. The battleship caught up from behind, and a huge shadow shrouded directly from the sky. The gun barrel was almost hitting the car. If they didn't stop, they would be bombarded by a cannon in minutes. Luo Yuda, who had just said harsh words in the car, looked very ugly now. He and his two men got out of the car and raised their hands directly to show surrender, taking advantage of Li Ziping's mistakes. Luo Yuda seemed particularly honest at the moment. Following his turn, the battleship also lowered its altitude. Xia Bai and Bailan jumped down and walked towards this side point. Luo Yuda said, "Mr. Xia, what do you mean? Didn't we have a good talk before? Why did you do it right after you said it?" Xia Bai Xiao said without a smile, "You were the one who made the first move, right? Just talk nice to me when you think you can't beat me, but as long as there is a chance, you will try every means to kill me. What we are talking about is really okay, but you don't have to be discouraged. Even if you don't take action, I won't let you go." The corners of Luo Yuda's mouth twitched. To be honest, he wanted to curse at this moment, but he glanced at the battleship across the sky, swallowed and said, 13 Kings. 13 Kings. Xia sir, you have such strength. I'm willing to surrender to you and help you control the entire 13 Kings. This guy is much smarter than Li Ziping. Xia Bai didn't respond, just smiled, looked at the two younger brothers behind Luo Yuda who were also frightened, and said, "You can go." The two boys were stunned for a moment. For a moment, they seemed to feel that they didn't hear clearly what Xia Bai was saying, and they didn't dare to move. Xia Bai said, "Don't you understand what I'm saying? You can leave. Go back and tell the people of the 13th King that I have detained Luo Yuda and redeem him with supplies." Luo Yuda became a little anxious after hearing this. He said, "It's impossible. The 13 Kings can never redeem anyone. If I are caught by you, it will have no meaning for the 13 Kings. They can't redeem anyone at all. I don't know if it will be a good thing for them if I don't go back to share the cake alone." Xia Bai glanced at him, pondered for a moment, and said, "Then just save it until more people are arrested in the future." At this moment, Luo Yuda's expression froze. What does saving mean? Wait until more people are arrested later. How many top officials of the 13 Kings do you want to capture? Xia Bai kept his word. He rushed directly to the two Luo Yuda's younger brothers and said, "Anyway, you two bring me the words. It is your business to redeem people or not. At the same time, I welcome you to continue to come to me. It's your trouble. You'd better give me some rice, flour, oil or something every time you come here. I need to build a survivor base here, and I don't need anything." The two people changed their expressions. After looking at each other, they turned around and ran directly to the car behind them. However, they had only taken 2 steps out when a gunshot suddenly rang out in the field. That was when Xia Bai opened fire. One of the two men fell to the ground in response, and his head was directly penetrated by Xia Bai. The other man was so frightened that he sat down on the ground and turned to look at the man holding the gun. Xia Bai didn't dare to move. This person is Luo Yuda's deputy. In his opinion, Xia Bai is simply a demonic existence. He had killed the top awakened Li Zipping before, but today, this person pretended to be unable to use the battleship. He tricked them into taking action, and then killed them all, and also wanted to save the top officials of the 13 Kings. He said earlier that he would let the 2 of them go, but now he turned around and shot one of them. This is simply crazy, dealing with the 13 Kings. The style of ordinary survivors is exactly the same. Xia Bai smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. I just suddenly thought that if I go back to deliver the message, one person is enough, but I have made a promise first. From now on, whenever I meet the 13 Kings, I will kill them immediately. I'm not sure those who survive under my hand should leave this organization as soon as possible and live an honest life." After saying such words, Xia Bai turned around and walked towards the battleship behind. Bailan took a slight step forward and directly picked up the iron rod in his hand. From top to bottom, he knocked Luo Yuda unconscious with one blow. Luo Yuda was not an awakened person. After that, Bailan dragged Luo Yuda's body like a corpse and followed Xia Bai towards the battleship. However, Luo Yuda and the others really misunderstood Xia Bai. He only took action now. It was really not because he was perverted and he was playing hard to get, but because the battleship was ready to be upgraded. As for the attitude of the 13 Kings, Xia Bai could not be more clean. He has no mercy for this kind of people. If he keeps his hands on this group of people, countless ordinary survivors will die among them in the future. The 13th King thought there was room for repayment with Xia Bai, but the reborn Xia Bai knew the 13th King very well, and it was impossible to cooperate with such an organization that might destroy the entire human front in the 3 eastern provinces in the future. However, Xia Bai also wanted to thank Luo Yuda and his group, because Luo Yuda not only sent himself as a hostage, but also sent 3 trucks of supplies. This gift was so considerate. If Luo Yuda knew what Xia Bai was thinking at this moment, he would probably be so angry that he would vomit blood. However, at this moment, Luo Yuda had been beaten to the head with a stick by Bailan and was unconscious, so there was no way to know Xia Bai's thoughts. After Xia Bai returned to the battleship, he scanned around again. After there was no more living 13 Kings in sight, he lowered the battleship and landed on the ground. The battleship was upgraded to level 4, and its camouflage form changed into a black armored vehicle the size of a double-decker bus. In its camouflage form, it also had a heavy metallic feel like a Land Overlord. However, the interior was still in the state of RV, but compared with before, the interior is less luxurious than a RV, but more cold and powerful than the main body of a battleship. The 4th level battleship has many more functions and modules, but at this moment, their battle has attracted a lot of losses around them. It is no longer suitable to stay here for a long time. Therefore, Xia Bai and the others quickly set off again. Xia Bai drove the battleship was in front, and Chen Shai and Cheng and others drove the 13 Kings vehicles containing supplies behind them, heading all the way towards Liao province. Under the camouflage form of the battleship, the black outer armor was extremely cold in the icy night. As it passed through, it looked like a beast advancing. Luo Yuda, as for Luo Yuda, was now locked in a corner and was being kept as a trophy by Xia Bai. Routinely asking for a wave of support, asking for a wave of favorites and recommendation votes. Chapter 145 Crazy. February 12th. 2119 at 8:21 Point Bashan Survivor Base Temporary Office Building of Zhejiang Group. Yang Chengxi was standing under the rain cover of this building, looking at the falling snowflakes outside. As time enters February, the weather has begun to get warmer, but the temperature in Changbai Mountain is still quite low. The weather here is changeable, and is actually not suitable for human beings to survive for a long time. However, no one can imagine that in the end of the world, this place will actually become an important survivor base for humanity. In just a few months, the building complex up and down Changbai Mountain has been expanded, and the military has even pulled the outer warning and safety lines outside the main body of Changbai Mountain. Therefore, although there are dense zombies and intelligent zombies running rampant in the 3 eastern provinces, the Changbai Mountain survivor base is still considered an absolutely safe place for now. The military's manpower loss rate was actually more serious than expected. Not to mention how many people died in their sleep on the night of the outbreak. Just before the establishment of the Changbai Mountain survivor base, the large army was fine, but the small army was not so good. Lucky for you. The sky was gloomy. Yang Chengxi lit a cigarette and stood under the rain cover outside the Zhejiang Group building and smoked slowly. The neighborhood was deserted, and not many people recognized this young man in ordinary clothes. But he didn't stand for long when another person walked out of the building. That was one of Xia Bai's old acquaintances, Yi Kazhi, the security chief of the Zhejiang Group who had a close relationship. The man walked out and stood side by side with Yang Chengxi. He also lit a cigarette and took a sip. Yi Kazhi is still wearing the same meticulous suit and leather shoes as always, but now downstairs in the Zhejiang Group, he seems to be somewhat matched. After a while, it was Yi Kazhi who spoke first and said, "Come to see Mr. Jin. Why don't you go in, Mr. Jin is a busy man. I'm meeting someone else, and I'm still waiting in line." Yang Chengxi recited and sighed. The boss of Zhejiang Group will be busier than my father in the end of the world. Yi Kazhi smiled and said, "I heard that you got something that can suppress all types of viruses." Yang Chengxi frowned, glanced at Yi Kazhi, and said, "I just got the analysis results this morning. How come you know it now?" Although he said this, there was not much surprise on his face. Yi Kazhi smiled. It's the end of the world. In such a big place, secrets are no longer secrets. You can't hide it from those who should know. People who shouldn't know will never know it in their lifetime. Besides, aren't we cooperating with you? Is it square? Yang Chengxi smacked his mouth. What he was thinking about now was what Xia Bai said when he threw the tube of reagent to him. At that time, Xia Bai didn't say that the thing given to him was a full-type virus suppressant, but that thing was indeed worthy of the word sincerity. No one thought that such a survivor, who looked very ordinary from the background, not only had something as strange as the black ghost in his hand, but also had such a thing in his hand. When the research report on this thing came out, almost everyone was shocked, and those scientists were going crazy. You know, although people have been studying this zombie virus for a long time, they are almost at a loss. Even if it is impossible to suppress this virus, the emergence of this thing is simply like a miracle. And because of the existence of this thing, the military's attitude towards the black ghost has also become more serious. The original plan was to wait for Xia Bai and the others to establish a survivor base, and then use satellite tracking positions to release materials by airdrop. But as soon as Xia Bai's sincerity was studied and what its function was, the attitude above changed. Now it seems that someone has already gone to welcome Xia Bai and the others, and they must express their great importance. Of course, Yang Chengxi would not tell him these things. Yang Chengxi was silent for a moment and said, "Don't talk nonsense to others about this matter. That thing is a god, but it is not that powerful. It can only temporarily suppress the division of the virus, although it can resist the known virus in a broad sense. All branches of this zombie virus cannot kill the virus, nor do they have any effect on individuals who have been completely zombified. They can only have an effect on newly infected people, suppressing the virus in a short period of time, and prolonging the time of zombification after infection, and even death." Yi Kazhi glanced at him and said, "It's nonsense to cause death, right? You don't have to fool me. You told me so many characteristics. Don't you just want to find out how much I know about this thing?" Yang Chengxi took a puff of cigarette and fell silent. As he smiled and said, "You still don't know about the organizations of our Xiangbei Mountain Survivor Base. Our Chinese information chain and relationship network are useful regardless of whether there is a civilized society or not. Why? Are you talking to the 13 kings now, Yi?" Kizzy said, "The 13 kings? I can't reach that level, but you came here to see Mr. Jin today because of the 13 kings, right, Yang?" Chengxi nodded. "It is true. The 13 kings are related to the Zoo Group and the Scientific Research Center. This is something that should not be taken care of originally. But what kind of people and organizations are the 13 kings? I think you are better than me. To be clearer, we originally planned to use the Mutual Rescue Association to suppress him, but the Mutual Rescue Association was too loose and Leo Huo was too kind to take on this matter, so, Yi." Kizzy said, "Aren't you worried about me knowing about this? You don't know if I don't tell you, Yi." Kizzy laughed, but his expression became serious. "You can rest assured that Mr. Jin will probably refuse. We are doing business. Logically speaking, we should not get involved in this kind of thing, but we have to do business. It's true, you can't just let a bunch of bandits grow bigger, but the 13 kings are actually the 12 kings now." When he said this, he paused slightly and said, "However, I heard that there is a character in the Mutual Rescue Association recently, named Chuking. Have you heard of it, Yang?" Chengxi frowned and asked in confusion, "Chuking, Yi?" Kizzy said, "It is said that he is also from the Ice City Survivor Base." Halfway through his words, the conversation changed slightly. He stopped talking about this topic and suddenly turned to another matter. He said, "Have you heard about what happened yesterday, Yang?" Chengxi glanced at Kizzy. What did this guy mean by suddenly changing the subject? He frowned, but didn't ask immediately. Since the other party didn't want to talk, there was no point in asking. He wanted to use his own channels to investigate later. He just shook his head and said, "What's the matter? Ah, you not as well informed as I am?" Kizzy exhaled and said, "It is said that the 13th king went to Xia Bai to discuss cooperation. Not only was he beaten to death, Luo Yuda was also taken hostage, and Xia Bai even said something. From now on, anyone who sees the 13 kings will be killed immediately, and now the people there are panic. The top officials of the 13 kings are going crazy. Please support." Also, I noticed that some people say that the author of the 20-meter battleship has poor imagination. Guys, if I build a 1,000-meter long battleship, will some people say that I'm joking? 10,000 energy points can build such a large battleship. The currency system of energy points has collapsed. Do you want me to collapse? Some people say that I ignore my own settings, but I have been following the settings. Let's go. Please have some faith in the author. Chapter 146 Level 4 Battleship. At the same time, at the junction of Ji Province and Liao Province, near Yuanping City, Xia Bai's warship was parked steadily on an abandoned road. The drone had already taken off and was heading in a further direction. Make sure the direction ahead is safe before they move next time. To plan a stable path forward. They have actually been parked here for a long time. Others were busy with their own affairs, but Xia Bai had been studying many new functions of the battleship. First of all, Xia Bai's original self-made solar matrix module was merged into the battleship and became part of the battleship. It is still located on the top of the battleship. Now it is protected by the deck. It can be raised when in use and can be lowered during war. It is completely integrated into the battleship system. With the upgrade of the battleship, the energy supply of this set of solar equipment is actually insufficient. The size of the battleship has expanded greatly. In the battleship form, its length has reached 22 meters and its width is 5 meters. The electromagnetic shield module is accompanied by with the upgrade. It can still cover the entire battleship to provide absolute protection, but the energy required will be greatly increased. However, this problem was solved with the upgrade of the power supply module. According to the description of the battleship, Xia Bai's current energy supply module is a 3-pole energy group. The core energy supply body is a small reactor, which serves as the main functional module, shield and other core components of the battleship. The former energy source functional modules and chemical fuel supply modules become secondary energy sources. The anti-gravity engine has also been upgraded. The maximum speed that Xia Bai's battleship can reach in the atmosphere is 6 times the speed of sound. For an aircraft of this size, this speed is already very terrifying. But now, although the battleship looks very huge from the outside, in fact, the engine and energy group occupy nearly 1/3 of the space inside the battleship, but this kind of miniaturized reactor is already extremely incredible. No country in the world today has been able to shrink a reactor to this extent or even put it into use. In addition, Xia Bai's battleship also added many new weapon modules. The original 30mm cannon still exists, and the 100mm caliber naval gun has become a twin-mounted naval gun. In addition, a 380mm main gun is embedded in the center of the battleship. It was completely fixed in the hull of the ship, and the direction of the muzzle could only rotate with the movement of the battleship. 65 energy points were needed to create a main gun shell. Although the power was amazing, in Xia Bai's view, it's okay to use something to fight against the dense tide of zombies, but it's really not used normally, to fight a few zombies or something. Isn't that a cannon to fight flies? In addition to this, 2 new automatic weapon modules, a triple-mounted 25mm caliber cannon, and 2 missile launch bays are still directly below the battleship. In addition, the battleship also has an extra beam traction tower, but its ability is not as powerful as in the movie. It can barely pull a person. Strictly speaking, this thing is not even it is a weapon module, but it is very functional, and has a great effect. There is no such thing on the Earth at the moment. At the end of the battleship, there is a macro missile matrix launch array that Xia Bai thinks is very deceiving. This thing is located at the end of the battleship. It is a plate only 17 inches in size. The missiles it can carry are indeed macro, judging from the size of the 6 slots inside, can only launch missiles about the size of a palm. Xia Bai checked, and found that the 4th level battleship can actually produce relevant missile models, including conventional bombs and incendiary bombs. 450 energy points. In Xia Bai's opinion, this thing was a bit too compact. If there was a real fight, 6 such small missiles would not even be very conspicuous. However, the battleship is now like a hedgehog. If this thing were not so small, there would really be no room for additional installations on the battleship. In addition, the outside of the battleship also has a set of condensation devices common to the battleship's own reactor. It not only provides necessary cooling for the reactor, but can also rapidly cool or even freeze the outside. Inside the battleship, the middle position has not changed much. For ordinary crew members, there are still only 2 seats like long benches, but the driver's cab in the front has undergone major changes. The cab has been widened, and the center is still the key driving position. The position is relatively elevated, and the weapon operating platform is directly below the driving position. When the battleship is started, the entire cab will enter a holographic mode. Like the previous weapon operating platform, it has a 360-degree all-round viewing angle, and all operating interfaces will be marked accordingly. Xia Bai believes that when the 5th and 6th levels arrive in the future, the bridge of the battleship will truly take shape. At the same time, a smart butler is also online inside the battleship. Its level of intelligence is not very high. It cannot reach the level of the Red Queen. It is only a little better than the so-called smartness at present, but this thing is simple. It is possible to perform auxiliary operations and even driving battleships on behalf of others. Xia Bai named this intelligent butler Alpha. Alpha is also an independent module for the battleship. If Xia Bai wants to let it exercise the items and powers in the battleship on its behalf, it also needs to be granted permission, and vice versa. Without Xia Bai's authority, Alpha can do nothing. It cannot affect any other modules except its own module. The owner of the system and the owner of the battleship will always have the highest authority in the battleship and the ability to withdraw publishing permissions at any time. However, the degree of automation inside the Xia Bai battleship is not too high, and the places where Alpha can play a role are therefore relatively limited. However, it is okay to occasionally control the battleship, carry out emergency measures, or control the automatic weapon modules. To carry out strikes of point, the battleship has reached level 4, and the front and rear weapon modules, apart from the functional traction device, already have as many as 8 modules. At this moment, the battleship is truly a hedgehog in the sky. Its external armor has been fully upgraded, and it is no longer a slim armored vehicle. In addition to the weapon module, the size of the internal medical cabin has also been expanded, and there is even a small analysis and testing module, which can hold about half a person. High, standing side by side with the medical cabin in the corner of the battleship. The interior of the battleship is also more textured. The sharp-edged state of the battleship can still only be reflected in the form of the battleship. In the camouflage state of a large armored vehicle, Xia Bai can only activate the macro-missile matrix launch array and ship-based missiles. However, in Xia Bai's current view, the camouflage form of his battleship is not really a camouflage form. Who doesn't know what's going on when such a large armored vehicle is put there? Moreover, now that the battleship has reached level 4, Xia Bai has no need to hide anymore. I noticed in this chapter that some people say that a 22-meter battleship cannot hold so many weapons. Let me put it this way. The total length of the Tiger tank is about 9 meters. The length of the battleship is 22 meters. 2 gun barrels plus 3. It is an artillery and machine gun weapons platform. The macro missiles are said to be very small, and the 2 missile bays are underneath. I just want to ask why they can't be put down. 1/3 of the energy is occupied. Should the energy and weapon modules be placed outside together? Who puts energy outside with weapons? Everyone wants me to think carefully, but everyone is trying to say that the author has no IQ from the commanding heights. Can you also think about what you are saying? I have said so much, and have no other meaning. Just like the protagonist in the book, I hope everyone can be kind and gentle, and don't speak so irritably. My original intention of writing the novel is also to hope that everyone can enjoy reading it. I'm happy myself. I'm not here to write any popular science articles. Chapter 147 Newly opened functions. The upgrade of the battleship to level 4, in addition to its huge changes, also opened a function that surprised Xia Bai. Captain's privileges. Under the battleship's manufacturing list, there is another column called Captain's privileges. According to the system description, the captain is the soul and leader of a battleship. After the battleship reaches a certain level, the captain's privileges, the function, will be turned on. The captain can use this function to manufacture certain things in advance that only higher level warships can manufacture, in order to ensure the captain's absolute status and tall image. In a strict sense, this privilege is to strengthen the captain's own abilities and strengthen the captain himself. Upgrading a battleship makes the battleship stronger, but this privilege is to strengthen the captain himself. However, what Xia Bai was thinking at this moment was, isn't this the legendary bureaucracy seeking privileges, but when the beneficiary of this bureaucracy is himself? Ordinary citizens like Xia Bai are quite happy. In Xia Bai's opinion, it was the best thing to be able to build something that could only be achieved by building more advanced battleships in advance. However, as described in the system, the items that can be created with this kind of authority are limited and will only benefit Xia Bai, the captain, alone. Therefore, it is impossible to have any heavy weapons or top level technology. At most, they are some Xia Bai or useful gadgets. This is indeed the case, and because the battleship has reached level 4, this function has just been turned on, and the captain's privileges can only create one thing, which seems a little shabby. Item: Individual Gravity Field Grenade. Introduction. This item can create an abnormal gravitational zone 15 times the gravity of the current environment in a space of about 5 cubic meters. Depending on the gravity field of the original space environment, the abnormal gravitational zone created by this grenade will exist for different times. Energy points required for manufacturing: 150 points. Remarks. Special item. This item is equipped with a captain's genetic identification lock, which can only be used by the captain. Abnormal use and destruction will cause the genetic lock to activate the self-destruction device, causing the entire grenade to explode. Xia Bai looked at the last note and couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. But this thing is indeed a magical thing. If it can be used well, it may have miraculous effects at certain critical moments in the future. After just one glance, Xia Bai made up his mind to get out a few of his own bureaucratic privilege grenades first. In addition to this thing, the things that 4th level battleships can produce have also been greatly improved compared to before. First of all, Xia Bai's missiles that had been unable to be self-sufficient before can finally be built, and there are many types of missiles, and the energy required for manufacturing was different at all. Xia Bai still planned to build ordinary missiles, such as armor-piercing bombs and radioactive missiles. Xia Bai only planned to make 1 or 2 in case of emergency. After all, Xia Bai mainly deals with zombies, not people. Even if he deals with people, they are at most blind survivors. Once a missile is fired, no matter what species it is, they will cry for their fathers and mothers. As for the military, Xia Bai would also be wary of the military, but he himself had never thought about having any conflict with the military, because in a sense, Xia Bai's ideas were consistent with the military's, and the military wanted to save their more people, and Xia Bai does not want to see the scene of a scorched earth with no living person for thousands of miles in the future. Xia Bai admires the military's magnanimity and courage and determination to turn the tide in the end of the world. They may have done something wrong but they are saving others. This alone is enough to make anyone who dares to accuse them feel ashamed. Having the courage to face zombies and work hard to survive, and reaching out to help others are two different things. No one has the obligation to help and save others. It may be difficult for people today to realize this, because the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base still exists, and there are still a large number of survivors wandering in the 3 northeastern provinces. And there are many uneven survivor gathering points. People who are not aware of the horrors of the future will not understand how important the military's efforts are at this moment. Xia Bai didn't understand it before, but he was a witness to the apocalypse. 5 years after the apocalypse he lived in, the survivor base in Xiangbei Mountain was destroyed. Zombies raged for the entire 5 years, and the living people's selfishness toward each other pushed them to the limit. When they reach a dead end, the survivors are like wandering ghosts, and often not a single living person is seen in a city. Only at that moment will those who advocate the theory of absolute selfishness in the end times truly realize that is a real dead end closer to home. In addition to these weapons, there are many other new craftable items for level 4 battleships. For example, something called biological adhesive has miraculous effects on trauma. It can quickly adhere and stop bleeding, while maintaining extremely high tissue and organ strength, which can save a life at critical moments. There is also a portable optical cloaking device that can achieve optical cloaking when scanning a target. The optical cloaking state will not be released unless the target moves or the device's power supply is interrupted. Since the 4th level of battleships, radar and other external monitoring and counter-monitoring functions have been greatly improved, and low-end optical invisibility can also be achieved. This thing seems to be really useless. Hiding immovable things may still come in handy. Strangely, Xia Bai also noticed a simple anti-gravity bed. Different from the sophisticated anti-gravity engines used on battleships, it was extremely rough and simple, and its floating height was also very limited. Once it was started, it meant the beginning. Life countdown is simply a one-time thing, but with this thing, flying beds and the like are no longer a dream. Of course, Xia Bai was not thinking about sleeping in the sky. What he was thinking about was that with this thing, if he was surrounded by zombies, wouldn't he be able to escape on a flying bed? Wouldn't they go crazy if we gave this thing to the military or a scientific research center? The warship's manufacturable items cover various fields. As the warship reaches level 4, in addition to a large number of conventional items on Earth, there are also an endless variety of black technology items in various fields. I don't know how long it will take to read it. Any of these things, taken out before the end of the world, is enough to make Xia Bai rich overnight. But right now, there are not many that can really be used. However, these things it will undoubtedly be of great use in the establishment of future survivor bases. Fighting zombies only requires weapons, but building a survivor base involves all aspects of life. Please bookmark, recommend, vote and support in any way. There will be another chapter to be updated later. Chapter 148 Unmanned Aerial Vehicle System. Xia Bai looked at these miscellaneous things for a while, and then turned his attention again to the weapons that the battleship could produce. Although there are many of these things, to survive in the apocalypse, getting weapons first is undoubtedly the most important thing. After all, Xia Bai has just been upgraded, and does not have the corresponding 25mm artillery, 380mm main gun, missile array, or even the nuclear fuel required for the reactor. If you want to truly unleash the strength of a battleship, you need ammunition for these weapons. Completely replenished. Xia Bai made a slight calculation. If he had to build a circle of these and fill them all up, all the energy points he had in his hand would probably be spent. This is really true. Spending money is like running water. It is worth mentioning that nuclear fuel is similar to gold in the battleship manufacturing list. They are all natural raw materials and cheap. Xia Bai even thought to himself that if this happened before the end of the world, he would probably be able to make a fortune just by selling this thing. Of course, Xia Bai just wanted to do something like this. Xia Bai quickly glanced at the things that were temporarily unused, but his eye stopped on another category point. That is an unmanned intelligent device in the battleship manufacturing list. And Xia Bai's Black Hawk 13 is in this category. At level 3, the things that can be manufactured here are limited, and the categories are also very single. Although drones look high-end, in terms of actual functions, they are actually no different from civilian ones. But as the battleship reached level 4, Xia Bai discovered that there was a new manufacturable model here. It's something called a Type I swarm drone. According to the description, it's about the same size as a Black Hawk 13, but it can carry 2 small missiles. But that's not critical. According to the item description, this thing's the real meaning of existence lies in the swarm itself, which can be controlled by connecting to a smart terminal or by combining a designated device with the human brain. That is, this is a drone similar to the Zerg. If humans are connected, they can become the mastermind of the swarm. Therefore, they can control the drone through VR and truly use their thoughts to control the drone. Attack. In theory, one person can control at least about 10 such drones, and the drones produced by the system can also recover energy points. When Xia Bai saw this thing, the first thing he thought of was the sky-blocking drone battle group guarding the battleship. Under the control of humans, they were bombarding the tide of corpses with arms and fingers. The dense energy points were like a tide. Come on, your own point numbers may be useless on the starry sky battlefield or even when fighting alien creatures, but on Earth, this thing is simply an artifact to deal with zombies, an aerial combat army. But soon, Xia Bai was poured cold water on him, because he soon discovered to his embarrassment that a 4th level battleship could not be manufactured at all. The technology required to assist humans in connecting to the drone cluster is far superior to that of the I-type swarm drone itself. Therefore, the drone can be built, but the main control device cannot. Xia Bai was dumbfounded. But humans are not good. He has another way out, that is, let Alpha control the drone swarm. Although Alpha's intelligence is not high, its computing power is very strong. Using it to control drones and become the mastermind of drones may not have much cleverness, but in terms of precision and execution of commands, it is far more reliable and powerful than humans and the human brain. Xia Bai immediately asked Alpha, and Alpha responded very quickly, "Dear Captain, after systematic calculation, the number of drones I can currently control is theoretically unlimited." Xia Bai's eyes lit up. What is unlimited? Unlimited means that you can control a drone to fly in the sky and perform a single operation. If you want to control each drone precisely and execute different commands in multiple threads at the same time, within a distance of 1 kilometer, I can operate about 30 drones at the same time, but beyond 1 kilometer, the further the distance, the fewer the number of drones that can be operated. This result is quite satisfactory to Xia Bai. Currently, this Type I swarm drone can only carry 2 small missiles, and its performance in all aspects is not high. It is obviously a low-end product, but the price is very low. It's not low, one requires 800 energy points. Therefore, Xia Bai doesn't plan to make many, just make some for use. When the level of future battleships rises, he will naturally build more advanced things. Xia Bai calculated around and sketched out countless plans in his mind, but if he wanted to realize them one by one, the energy points in his hand were still not enough. When a battleship reaches level 4, the demand for energy points increases sharply. These things still have to be done step by step. At the moment, the first priority is to create some ammunition that matches the existing weapon modules of the battleship, and then build a survivor base. Xia Bai established the survivor base for 2 main purposes. The first is to provide rear support for the battleships, to provide conditions for Xia Bai to steadily hunt zombies and earn energy points, and at the same time, to train the battleships that will surely grow bigger in the future. The second is that he will use this as a basis to establish a true safe zone in the 3 eastern provinces in the future. When alien creatures arrive, Xia Bai does not want to be a mere commander driving a warship around the world and running around to fight. Xia Bai is also a human being, and battleships are not omnipotent. They must have a place to rest, and they cannot let the zombies expand like this. When alien creatures come, he must first solve the problem of zombies. Xia Bai can control the distance. He can't, and he doesn't want to care about it, but he always wants to expand a piece of pure land nearby. After he finished checking the most important systems and modules of these warships, the sky had completely darkened, but Xia Bai began to check the other facilities and functions of the warships and the also upgraded energy point absorption system. A total of 10,000 energy points were spent on this upgrade, which was fully 10 times as much as the 1000 energy points spent on the previous upgrade from level 2 to level 3. However, apart from the analysis laboratory and a more complete operating system and radar system, there are not many other functional equipment added in the battleship. However, almost every system and module in the battleship has been upgraded. It can be said that it has been upgraded from the original. The low-end version has been upgraded a bit. This may seem like nothing, but it means an improvement in the overall performance of the entire battleship. The weapons and defense of the battleship are important, but what truly maintains the normal operation of the battleship can only be accomplished with the support of functional systems and modules. This is also laying the foundation for the big leap of level 5 battleships. The 6th helmsman of this book was born. I would like to thank the book friends for their generous reward for not being stuck in traffic every day. I would also like to thank all the book friends for their continued support, voting, collection and rewards. The Herbal Tea Club will continue to work hard. Chapter 149 Prospects. The 4th level battleships are completely improved compared to the 3rd level battleships. The 3rd level battleships can at most be aircraft within a planet, while the 4th level battleships can already roam in space for a long time. The ability to shuttle. Of course, the premise is that he has energy points. This is actually not difficult to do. Even if there are no zombies to kill in space, his solar panels can still work. After the transformation of the battleship, the continuity and function of the solar panels have been improved. Now they are no longer Xia Bai's crude version as a serious battleship functional module. At the earliest, when the battleship was still at the 1st level, Xia Bai thought that it was very difficult to save the 100 energy points required to upgrade the battleship to the 2nd level. But now, time has changed, and the situation has already changed. With the battleship's development, upgrading and killing zombies to accumulate energy points is like spawning monsters. In most cases, it is just a matter of time and method. And with the upgrades of battleships, and even when creating items for the first time, Xia Bai realized early on that, although energy points are the core of upgrading battleships and making items, if converted into the human currency system, 1 energy point is equivalent to the purchasing power of 100 yuan. Of course, all the items made by Xia Bai in the battleship are equivalent to cost price and have excellent performance. For example, firearms, no matter what model they are, as long as they are made from the battleship with firearms, it is difficult to have any quality problems. Of course, although this comparison is made, it is only a comparison. Energy points are energy points, which themselves are a unique energy situation absorbed by the battleship. Creating items and upgrading battleships are actually put into its use, and matter is conserved. Energy is also conserved. Therefore, the upgrade of the battleship and the final state of the upgrade are closely related to the number of energy points invested in each level upgrade. You can spend $1 to buy a bottle of cheap mineral water, but you cannot spend $1 bought a building point. The reason is the same. Because of this, the 2nd level battleship that requires 100 energy points to upgrade is not much different from the 1st level battleship itself. The 3rd level battleship is also fragile, and only the current 4th level is the battleship's the real beginning of the road to upgrade. From level 4 upwards, level 5 requires 100,000 energy points, while level 6 requires 1 million energy points. Only with that kind of fund investment can the warship usher in truly earth-shaking changes. Moreover, as the level increases, the battleship's ability to absorb equipment has also improved. It can now accurately absorb energy points within the range outside the battleship, and the range and accuracy of collecting and absorbing energy points will be improved. According to Xia Bai's knowledge, after the battleship reaches level 5, it will have real energy point recovery equipment. At that time, Xia Bai can pull out a team and let them bring this equipment to act as his coolie, go out to hunt zombies and absorb energy points for him. When the time comes, the speed at which he absorbs energy points will undoubtedly increase to a higher level again. Xia Bai checked these messy things and then began to search for the current list of items that can be manufactured by the warship. Before the third level and the second level, the items in the item manufacturing list were already diverse, and after the fourth level, they were even more diverse. It's dazzling. Moreover, some things may seem useless, but sometimes they can work wonders. For example, the powerful electromagnetic dog collar from before came into play now. Xia Bai built one of these things, let Alpha modify and strengthen it, and then put it on the unlucky dog he had just captured. The 13 kings captured Luo Yuda and tied the unfortunate guy like a rice dumpling and locked him in the corner of the battleship. At the same time, Xia Bai defined Luo Yuda's range of activities by using a powerful electromagnetic dog collar. Once Luo Yuda's body moved about 1 meter away from his current position, the collar would discharge rapidly, enough to the person was electrocuted and knocked unconscious on the spot. Regarding this, Xia Bai was also very frank and made it clear to Luo Yuda, if you dare to move around and don't ask if you can run away, if you are electrocuted a few times, you are probably not far away from dementia. Luo Yuda calmed down now. And he said, it doesn't make sense for you to take me as a hostage. Even if you capture other people from the 13 kings, it doesn't make much sense. Why don't you put me back, and I'll help you get it? How about subjugating the power of the entire 13 kings? Xia Bai looked at the person in front of him with a cold look in his eyes, as if he was trying to determine how true this person's words were. The 13 kings are an organization composed of thugs. To have a place in such an organization, being ruthless, cunning, and going back on one's word are the most basic survival skills. Therefore, in Xia Bai's opinion, the fundamental purpose of what Luo Yuda said now was probably just to get away. When this guy really returns to the territory of the 13 kings of Changbei Mountain, he will probably have another story and act. But in Xia Bai's opinion, it might not be a good choice and plan to destroy the 13 kings from within. However, at this moment, Li Jingyang on the other side suddenly walked over and interrupted the conversation between the two people. Black Hawk 13 seemed to have discovered something. Li Jingyang directly handed the tablet in Xia Bai's hand and motioned for him to see what was going on inside. Xia Bai glanced at Luo Yuda, who was staring at them closely, and then set his eyes on the panel Li Jingyang handed him to see what was going on here. Darkness has already fallen, and the picture shows a commercial district in Yuanping City at night. Under a 3-story high-rise building, several streets are being blocked by zombies, and many survivors are trapped in this area. In the middle, under the light of the lit fire, there were all frightened faces, and there were crowds of people, at least hundreds of people. At the top of the tall building, there was also a crowd of people, and there was chaos, but someone was firing flares into the sky, desperately seeking help in this lonely apocalyptic city. But I don't know why. The pictures returned are not very clear, and sometimes there are even brief interruptions in the signal. Xia Bai looked at the scene on the screen and felt inexplicably excited. He said as if he was rushing to pick up money, let's set out now to rescue people. If there is no one, how can we build a survivor base? Li Jingyang stared at the guy in front of him and thought to himself, are you doing this to save people, or are you trying to recruit others to help you build a survivor base? Don't be so purposeful. Okay, the 7th helmsman of this book was born. I would like to thank my book friends for their endless support. Originally, I climbed into bed, glanced at it, and then rolled down to add more chapters. Thanks to my brothers for their support. Chapter 150 Death Place. 2100 hours on February 12th, 2019. This was the 7th day that Kyle Deming was trapped in Yuanping City, and the situation was taking a turn for the worse. He is an out-and-out Bingcheng native. In the early days of the apocalypse, he once gathered a group of people to hide in a home furnishing supermarket on the outskirts of Bingcheng. He also had an encounter with Xia Bai. Of course, things are changing in the apocalypse. At that time, Kyle Deming had almost forgotten about the incident. After all, home furnishing supermarkets are not a place to stay for a long time. In a provincial capital city like Bingcheng, the number of zombies is too huge, and they could not hide for long. Later, they were displaced for a while. After several rounds, about 3-4 months ago, I came to Yuanping City. The Yuanping City survivor base was established by relevant local departments, but it did not have the armed support of the military. It was said to be a survivor base, but it was actually quite simple. It was centered on a 37-story commercial building, with several surrounding streets. The streets are just high walls built with vehicles. At that time, the Bingcheng prison survivor base had just collapsed, and the news of the establishment of the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base had not yet spread, but Kyle Deming had already been smoothed by the apocalypse. In the early days of the apocalypse, Kyle Deming, who was an awakened person, also thought about whether he could be an awakened person like the protagonists in those apocalyptic novels and counterattack from an ordinary person to become an apocalyptic tycoon. However, reality gave Kyle Deming a hard blow. In this apocalypse, awakened people are just physical enhancers and do not have those exaggerated abilities and strength at all. In some cases, they may have advantages, but in most cases, they are no different from ordinary survivors. This virus comes from alien creatures, and its purpose is not to awaken supernatural powers in all human beings. The awakened ones are just accidental benign receptors under a large population base. Kyle Deming is a cautious person, just like when he met Xia Bai at the Bingcheng home furnishing supermarket. Once he realizes that something cannot be done, he will not take unnecessary risks. At that time, he decided to take root in this small gathering place of survivors in Zhenpei City. Although there was no strong armed force here, because of this, he, the awakened person, was highlighted. He and his people enjoy a high status here. After several months of operation, Kyle Deming can be regarded as a person who can speak in this small gathering place with nearly 1,000 people, plus those who come from Bingcheng all the way. With the help of the brothers who followed him here, they can also become a small force on their own, enjoying the same status as the government who founded the place. Although it is said that this place was established by the government, in fact, they are all small figures in the agency. Before the end of the world, they were not even officials. The only leader was said to have offended someone above. A big shot. That's why he was not taken into custody by the military. Originally, everything was actually going well. Kyle Deming's survivor base was located in a new development zone near the outer circle of the city. There were not many people, and not many zombies. Although Yuanping City also had a population of hundreds of thousands, Kyle Deming's there are also many survivors. The apocalypse has been going on for such a long time, so they always have experience. They disperse in large groups and lure the zombies into the wilderness in other directions. This may be risky, but it can greatly slow down the process. Time when the zombie wave surrounded their side. Hundreds of people diverting zombies to the outside in more than a dozen directions can often achieve miraculous results. Of course, this only works in the early stage. Recently, a large number of zombies have begun to gather, and the drainage effect has become worse and worse. Their situation here has also begun to become dangerous. The survivors on Kyle Deming's side had to prepare to give up and leave here. Otherwise, once the zombies surrounded them, they would be almost waiting to die with the weapons and equipment they had. The survivors here began to go out in large numbers to search for supplies. In the past, they only searched for supplies nearby, but now they have spread to the entire city, preparing for the long journey. Kyle Deming has the same status among this group of survivors. Several strong survivor forces have their own agendas. After leaving Yuanping City, judging from the current situation, their only place to go may be the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base. When they arrive in Xiangbei Mountain, the more materials they have in their hands, the more comfortable their life will be at the Xiangbei Mountain survivor base. However, what Kao Deming never expected was that after starting a large-scale attack on the entire city, it would actually accelerate their death point. Someone discovered a swarm of intelligent zombies. Kao Deming didn't know the specific situation. Those people were the subordinates of another awakened person. It is said that they found a group of zombies that looked like living people in the northwest corner of the city. More than 20 people went there, and only one person escaped alive. They came back, and that same day, a large number of zombies gathered towards their location, densely packed, surrounding their small settlement point. What Kao Deming didn't understand was that these survivors had stayed in Yuanping City for such a long time, and had always behaved unscrupulously. The group of intelligent zombies should have discovered them long ago. Why did they attack them only after they were discovered? However, no one could answer this question for Kao Deming. Zombies came to the city overnight, and Kao Deming realized that the best way was to kill the intelligent zombies leading the zombie tide point. However, intelligent zombies are mixed in the endless sea of corpses and cannot be found at all, let alone beheading them. The government people tried to break out at the beginning, but there were too many zombies outside. There were already nearly 10,000 zombies gathered around them, but they never gathered in large numbers. Because of this, Kao Deming and the others only then would he take the risk of staying here when zombies might besiege the city at any time and seize a large amount of supplies from Yuanping City. Now, almost all of these were attracted by intelligent zombies, plus more zombies were attracted from other directions. The government's convoy almost ran head-on into the zombie tide. The vehicles were overturned, and the living people were torn away. They came out and tore them apart. In the dense tide of corpses, they didn't even have a chance to turn into zombies, and they would be eaten alive. Kao Deming was also frightened by this. He was originally afraid of death, and no matter what, he didn't want to be torn apart alive by zombies like this. There were already a lot of zombies gathered around them, and these zombies moved very fast. As long as something guided them a little, they would gather in large numbers and surround the survivor base set up at the crossroads. They immediately tried to send a distress signal to the outside world. However, for some reason, their signal was severely interfered, and they were unable to call for help. Nearly 1,000 people here were already in panic, and everyone had a premonition that death was coming. But when night fell, at several intersections, intelligent zombies took advantage of the darkness and set fires on the walls built with vehicles. Attacking in the east and west, a large number of zombies poured in from a 7-story building on the other side, and were frantically hitting the door of the building that had been sealed by Kao Deming, and the others. Living people are close at hand. Even without the guidance of intelligent zombies, these walking zombies have fallen into a state of madness. They are trying to kill them like crazy, taking advantage of the fire on one side to have a cannibal carnival in the apocalypse. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.